Chapter 1764. After saying that, Li Zixuan looked at Sun Zhiping again and instructed in a deep voice, "Field Officer Sun, according to my standards just now, form a team of 100 people. Pick out those who don't meet the requirements and do individual training later. I only have one requirement, and that is to follow orders and be uniform. As for those who are not up for battle, they will be punished according to the military rules." "Yes, sir." Sun Zhiping immediately stepped forward and cupped his fist. "All right, you're clear on the way to charge. I will leave the rest of the training to you. You must make sure that they are up to standard today." Li Zixuan patted Sun Zhiping's shoulder and said. He was in the army and was only in charge of the training plan. He had to rely on the captains of each battalion to lead the troops. There was no need for him to do everything personally. "Yes, sir." Sun Zhiping cupped his fist. 6th Battalion, charge. 12121. In the afternoon, on the drill ground of the Black Armored Army's camp, the soldiers of the Wu Battalion became the most eye-catching Zai. Under Sun Zhiping's command, the cavalrymen charged toward a row of wooden stakes without any fear of death. Of course, they didn't have to hit the wooden stakes every time they charged. Most of the time, Sun Zhiping would give the command to stop when they were close to the wooden stakes. As for hitting the wooden stakes, it was just a random situation. After all, every time they hit the wooden stakes, there would be injuries to the horses and soldiers. This was just daily training and not on the battlefield. The Black Armored Army couldn't accept such a huge loss. After saying that, Li Zixuan looked at Sun Zhiping again and instructed in a deep voice, "Field Officer Sun, according to my standards just now, form a team of 100 people. Pick out those who don't meet the requirements and do individual training later. I only have one requirement, and that is to follow orders and be uniform. As for those who are not up for battle, they will be punished according to the military rules." "Yes, sir." Sun Zhiping immediately stepped forward and cupped his fist. "All right, you're clear on the way to charge. I will leave the rest of the training to you. You must make sure that they are up to standard today." Li Zixuan patted Sun Zhiping's shoulder and said. He had joined the army, so he was only responsible for customizing the drill plan. As for the specific people who would lead the troops and carry them out, he still had to rely on the captains of each battalion. There was no need for him to personally attend to everything. This general obeys. Sun Zhiping cupped his fists and said, 6th Squad, charge. 121-121. In the afternoon, on the drill ground of the Black Armored Army's camp, the soldiers of the Wu Battalion became the most eye-catching Zai. Under Sun Zhiping's command, the cavalrymen charged toward a row of wooden stakes without fear of death again and again. Of course, they did not have to hit the wooden poles every time they charged. Most of the time, Sun Zhiping would give the order to stop when the team was close to the wooden poles. As for hitting the wooden poles, it was just a random situation. After all, with every collision, there would be injuries to the horses and soldiers. And this was just training and not on the battlefield. The black armored troops could not accept such a huge loss. After that, Li Zixuan looked at Sun Zhiping and said in a deep voice, "Captain Sun, according to my standards just now, 100 men in a battalion. Pick out those who do not meet the requirements and have them undergo individual training. I only have one requirement, and that is to follow orders and be uniform. As for those who are timid or not, they will be punished according to the crime of being afraid of war in the military rules." This general obeys. Sun Zhiping immediately stepped forward and cupped his fists. "All right, now that you are clear about the way of charging, I will leave the rest of the training to you. Today, you must train them well." Li Zixuan patted Sun Zhiping's shoulder and said. He had joined the army, so he was only responsible for customizing the drill plan. As for the specific people who would lead the troops and carry them out, he still had to rely on the captains of each battalion. There was no need for him to personally attend to everything. This general obeys. Sun Zhiping cupped his fists and said, 6th Squad, charge. 12121. In the afternoon, on the drill ground of the Black Armored Army's camp, the soldiers of the Wu Battalion became the most eye-catching Zai. Under Sun Zhiping's command, the cavalrymen charged toward a row of wooden stakes without fear of death again and again. Of course, they did not have to hit the wooden poles every time they charged. Most of the time, Sun Jiping would give the command to stop when the cavalrymen were about to hit the wooden poles. As for hitting the wooden poles, it was just a random situation. After all, every time they hit the wooden poles, there would be injuries to the horses and soldiers. And this was just daily training and not on the battlefield. The Black Armored Army could not accept such a huge loss. After that, Li Zishuan looked at Sun Jiping again and said in a deep voice, "Captain Sun, according to my standards just now, 100 men in a battalion. Pick out those who do not meet the requirements and have them undergo individual training. I only have one requirement, and that is to follow orders and be uniform. As for those who are timid or not, they will be punished according to the crime of being afraid of war in the military rules." This general obeys. Sun Jiping immediately stepped forward and cupped his fists. "That's enough. You are already clear on the way to charge the cavalrymen. I will leave the rest of the training to you. Today, you must make sure that they are trained properly." Li Zishuan patted Sun Jiping's shoulder and said. He was in the army and was only in charge of customizing the training plan. As for the people who would lead the troops, he still had to rely on the captains of each battalion. There was no need for him to do everything personally. This general obeys. Sun Jiping cupped his fists and replied, "6th Battalion, charge." 12121. In the afternoon, on the drill ground of the Black Armored Army's camp, the soldiers of the Wu Battalion became the most eye-catching Zai. Under Sun Jiping's command, the cavalrymen charged towards a row of wooden stakes without fear of death again and again. Of course, they didn't have to hit the wooden poles every time they charged. Most of the time, Sun Jiping would give the command to stop when the cavalrymen were close to the wooden poles. As for hitting the wooden poles, it was just a random situation. After all, every time they hit the wooden poles, there would be horses and soldiers getting injured. This was just daily training and not on the battlefield. The Black Armored Army couldn't afford to lose so many soldiers. After that, Li Zishuan looked at Sun Jiping again and said in a deep voice, "Captain Sun, according to my standards just now, 100 men in a battalion. Pick out those who don't meet the requirements and do individual training later. I only have one requirement, and that is to follow orders and be uniform. As for those who are timid or not, they will be punished according to the crime of being afraid of war in the military rules." This general obeys. Sun Jiping immediately stepped forward and cupped his fists. "That's enough. You are already clear on the way to charge the cavalrymen. The rest of the training will be left to you. Today, you must make sure that they are trained properly." Li Zishuan patted Sun Jiping's shoulder and said. He had joined the army and was only responsible for the preparation of the training plan. As for the people who would lead the troops, he still had to rely on the captains of each battalion. There was no need for him to do everything personally. This general obeys. Sun Jiping cupped his fists and replied, "6th Battalion, charge." 12121. In the afternoon, on the drill ground of the Black Armored Army's camp, the soldiers of the Wu Battalion became the most eye-catching Zai. Under Sun Jiping's command, the cavalrymen charged towards a row of wooden stakes without fear of death again and again. Of course, they didn't have to hit the wooden poles every time they charged. Most of the time, Sun Jiping would give the command to stop when the cavalrymen were close to the wooden poles. As for hitting the wooden poles, it was just a random situation. After all, every time they hit the wooden poles, there would be horses and soldiers getting injured. This was just daily training and not on the battlefield. The Black Armored Army couldn't afford to lose so many soldiers. After that, Li Zishuan looked at Sun Jiping again and said in a deep voice, "Captain Sun, according to my standards just now, 100 men in a battalion. Pick out those who don't meet the requirements and do individual training later. I only have one requirement, and that is to follow orders and be uniform. As for those who are timid or not, they will be punished according to the crime of being afraid of war in the military rules." This general obeys. Sun Jiping cupped his fists and replied immediately, "That's enough. You already know how to charge the cavalrymen. I will leave the rest of the training to you. Today, you must train them well. Li Zishuan patted Sun Jiping's shoulder and said. He had joined the army and was only responsible for the preparation of the training plan. As for the people who would lead the troops, he still had to rely on the captains of each battalion. There was no need for him to do everything personally. This general obeys. Sun Jiping cupped his fists and replied, 6th Battalion, charge. 12121. In the afternoon, on the drill ground of the Black Armored Army's camp, the soldiers of the Wu Battalion became the most eye-catching Zai. Under Sun Jiping's orders, the cavalrymen charged towards a row of wooden stakes again and again without any fear of death. Of course, they didn't have to hit the wooden stakes every time they charged. Most of the time, Sun Jiping would give the order to stop when they were about to hit the wooden stakes. As for hitting the wooden stakes, it was just a random situation. After all, every time they hit the wooden stakes, there would be injuries to the horses and soldiers. And this was just daily training and not on the battlefield. The Black Armored Army couldn't accept so many losses. After that, Li Zishuan looked at Sun Jiping again and said in a deep voice, Captain Sun, according to my standards just now, 100 men in a battalion. Pick out those who don't meet the requirements and do individual training later. I only have one requirement, and that is to follow orders and be uniform. As for those who are timid or not, they will be punished according to the crime of being afraid of war in the military rules. This general obeys. Sun Jiping cupped his fists and replied immediately. That's enough. You are already clear on the way to charge the cavalrymen. I will leave the rest of the training to you. Today, you must make sure that they are trained properly. Li Zishuan patted Sun Jiping's shoulder and said. He was in the army and was only in charge of customizing the training plan. As for the people who would lead the troops, he still had to rely on the captains of each battalion. There is no need for him to do everything personally. This general obeys. Sun Jiping cupped his fists and replied, 6th Battalion, charge. 12121. In the afternoon, on the drill ground of the Black Armored Army's camp, the soldiers of the Wu Battalion became the most eye-catching Zai. Under Sun Jiping's orders, the cavalrymen charged towards a row of wooden stakes again and again without any fear of death. Of course, they didn't have to hit the wooden stakes every time they charged. Most of the time, Sun Jiping would give the order to stop when they were about to hit the wooden stakes. As for hitting the wooden stakes, it was just a random situation. After all, every time they hit the wooden stakes, there would be injuries to the horses and soldiers. And this was just daily training and not on the battlefield. The Black Armored Army couldn't accept such a huge loss. After saying that, Li Zishuan looked at Sun Jiping again and said in a deep voice, Captain Sun, according to my standards just now, 100 men in a battalion. Pick out those who don't meet the requirements and do individual training later. I only have one request, and that is to follow orders and be uniform. As for those who are timid or not, they will be punished according to the crime of being afraid of war in the military rules. This general obeys. Sun Jiping cupped his fists and replied immediately. That's enough. You are already clear on the way to charge the cavalrymen. The rest of the training will be left to you. Today, you must make sure that they are trained properly. Li Zishuan patted Sun Jiping's shoulder and said. He had joined the army and was only in charge of customizing the training plan. As for the specific people who would lead the troops, he still had to rely on the captains of each battalion. There was no need for him to do everything personally. This general obeys. Sun Jiping cupped his fists and replied, 6th Battalion, charge. 12121. In the afternoon, on the drill ground of the Black Armored Army's camp, the soldiers of the Wu Battalion became the most eye-catching Zai. Under Sun Jiping's command, the cavalrymen charged toward a row of wooden stakes without any fear of death. Of course, they didn't have to hit the wooden stakes every time they charged. Most of the time, Sun Jiping would give the order to stop when they were about to hit the wooden stakes. As for hitting the wooden stakes, it was just a random situation. After all, every time they hit the wooden stakes, there would be injuries to the horses and soldiers. And this was just daily training and not on the battlefield. The Black Armored Army couldn't accept such a huge loss. After that, Li Zixuan looked at Sun Jiping again and said in a deep voice, "Captain Sun, according to my standards just now, 100 men in a battalion. Pick out those who don't meet the requirements and do individual training later. I only have one requirement, and that is to follow orders and be uniform. As for those who are timid or not, they will be punished according to the crime of being timid in the military rules." This general obeys. Sun Jiping cupped his fists and replied immediately, "That's enough. You already know how to charge the cavalrymen. I'll leave the rest of the training to you. Today, you must train them well." Li Zixuan patted Sun Jiping's shoulder and said he had joined the army and was only in charge of customizing the training plan. As for the specific people who would lead the troops, he still had to rely on the captains of each battalion. There was no need for him to do everything personally. This general obeys. Sun Jiping cupped his fists and replied, "6th Battalion, charge." 12121. In the afternoon, on the drill ground of the Black Armored Army's camp, the soldiers of the Wu Battalion became the most eye-catching Zai. Under Sun Jiping's orders, the cavalrymen charged toward a row of wooden stakes again and again without any fear of death. Of course, they didn't have to hit the wooden stakes every time they charged. Most of the time, Sun Jiping would give the order to stop when they were about to hit the wooden stakes. As for hitting the wooden stakes, it was just a random situation. After all, every time they hit the wooden stakes, there would be injuries to the horses and soldiers. This was just daily training and not on the battlefield. The Black Armored Army couldn't accept such a huge loss. After that, Li Zixuan looked at Sun Jiping again and said in a deep voice, "Captain Sun, according to my standards just now, 100 men in a battalion. Pick out those who don't meet the requirements and do individual training later. I only have one requirement, and that is to follow orders and be uniform. As for those who are timid or not, they will be punished according to the crime of being timid in the military rules." This general obeys. Sun Jiping cupped his fists and replied immediately, "That's enough. You are already clear on the way to charge the cavalrymen. I will leave the rest of the training to you. Today, you must make sure that they are trained properly." Li Zixuan patted Sun Jiping's shoulder and said he was in the army and was only in charge of customizing the training plan. As for the people who would lead the troops, he still had to rely on the captains of each battalion. There was no need for him to do everything personally. This general obeys. Sun Jiping cupped his fists and replied, 6th Battalion, charge. 12121. In the afternoon, on the drill ground of the Black Armored Army's camp, the soldiers of the Wu Battalion became the most eye-catching Zai. Under Sun Jiping's orders, the cavalrymen charged towards a row of wooden stakes again and again without any fear of death. Of course, they didn't have to hit the wooden stakes every time they charged. Most of the time, Sun Jiping would give the order to stop when they were about to hit the wooden stakes. As for hitting the wooden stakes, it was just a random situation. After all, every time they hit the wooden stakes, there would be injuries to the horses and soldiers. This was just daily training and not on the battlefield. The Black Armored Army couldn't accept such a huge loss. Chapter 1765. Reporting to the general, it is said that the Wu Battalion lost more than 10 war horses during the afternoon training, and 40 to 50 soldiers were slightly injured. At night, the day's training ended, and the soldiers had their dinner. At this time, Zhang Kongyan quietly came to Qiu Xingong's tent and bowed to him with cupped fists. The Black Armored Army was now in a closed training period. During this period, not only were the ordinary soldiers not allowed to go out, even the high-ranking officers had to stay in the camp day and night, unless the emperor summoned them or there was an important court meeting. Even Duan Jishuan was not allowed to leave the camp. What? Training can cause the loss of war horses and soldiers? What are they training for? Qiu Xingong frowned and asked. He was puzzled. In the afternoon, he spent most of his time in his tent going through official documents. Previously, he was mainly in charge of the daily training of the Black Armored troops. However, after Li Zixuan came, he stole his job. Thus, his position as the second-in-command of the Black Armored troops was changed to a civilian position. Some of the official documents, rations, and logistics were all handed over to him, so he was still very busy every day. In his opinion, the daily training in the camp would at most cause the soldiers to fall off their horses and get some scratches. How could there be a situation where both the soldiers and the horses were injured? This was not going to the front line to fight a war, nor was it going into the mountains to hunt. Replying to the general, the Wu Battalion was mainly doing cavalry training in the afternoon. It is said that when the soldiers in the Wu Battalion were about to reach the obstacles, Li Zishuan and Sun Jiping did not give the order to stop. So many of the soldiers and their horses crashed into the wooden stakes. That was why there were so many casualties. Zhang Kongyan replied with a smile. After that, he bowed to Qiu Xingong and said with a flattering face, "Haha." Although the details of the competition between the Wu Battalion and the 2nd Battalion in 10 days is not confirmed yet, but the Wu Battalion has suffered casualties before the competition. To us, this is really a good thing. The 2nd Battalion will definitely win this competition, so I congratulate the general in advance. Qiu Xingong's face was filled with astonishment at first, but soon after, the corners of his mouth curled up into an arc. Everyone could tell that he was rejoicing in other people's misfortune. After a moment, the old man suddenly straightened his face and said, "Why are you congratulating me? If you want to congratulate someone, you should congratulate Sun Tao. He is the commander of the 2nd Battalion." Replying to the general, the Wu Battalion's training in the afternoon lost more than 10 war horses, and 40 to 50 soldiers suffered minor injuries. At night, the day's training ended, and the soldiers had their dinner. At this time, Zhang Kongyan quietly came to Qiu Xingong's tent and bowed to him with cupped fists. The black armored troops were currently in a closed training period. During this period, not only were the ordinary soldiers not allowed to leave, even the high-ranking officers had to stay in the barracks day and night. Unless the emperor summoned them or there was an important court meeting, even Duan Jishuan was not allowed to leave the barracks. What? Losing war horses and soldiers? What training are they training? Qiu Xingong furrowed his brows. He was puzzled and asked. In the afternoon, he spent most of his time in his tent going through official documents. Previously, he was mainly in charge of the daily training of the black armored troops. However, after Li Zishuan came, he stole his job. Thus, his position as the second-in-command of the black armored troops was changed to a civilian position. Some of the official documents, rations, and logistics were all handed over to him, so he was still very busy every day. In his opinion, the daily training in the camp would at most cause the soldiers to fall off their horses and get some scratches. How could there be a situation where both the soldiers and the horses were injured? This was not going to the front lines to fight a war, nor was it going into the mountains to hunt. Replying to the general, the Wu Battalion's training in the afternoon was mainly for cavalry charging. It is said that when the soldiers in the Wu Battalion were about to reach the obstacles, Li Zishuan and Sun Jiping did not give the order to stop. So many of the soldiers and their horses crashed into the wooden stakes. That was why there were so many casualties. Zhang Kongyan replied with a smile. After that, he bowed to Qiu Xingong and said with a flattering face, "Haha." Although the details of the competition between the Wu Battalion and the 2nd Battalion in 10 days have not been confirmed, but the fact that the Wu Battalion has lost soldiers before the competition, to us, it is really a joyous matter. The 2nd Battalion will definitely win this competition. I congratulate the general in advance. Qiu Xingong's face was filled with astonishment at first, but soon after, the corners of his mouth curled up into an arc. Everyone could tell that he was rejoicing in other people's misfortune. After a moment, the old man suddenly straightened his face and said, "Why are you congratulating this old man? If you want to congratulate someone, you should congratulate Sun Tao. He is the commander of the 2nd Battalion." Chapter 1766. Hey, these bastards dare to speak ill of Little Xian behind your back. Just you wait, Little Xian. Watch how I, Old Cheng, teach them a lesson. Outside the Wu Battalion's tent, Li Zishuan and Cheng Chumo both heard what the soldiers were saying. Cheng Chumo's face darkened as he rolled up his sleeves, only to find that he had come out with his upper body bare. He didn't have any sleeves at all. Then he slapped his head in exasperation and rushed towards the tent in front of them. Although he was also very tired from the training these past 2 days, and if it was someone else who joined the army, Chung Chumo, would definitely be cursing behind their backs. But the person who joined the army was Li Zishuan, his brother. How could he allow others to speak ill of his brother behind his back? Obviously, this was a typical case of siding with family over reason. If he chose someone, he would protect him even if he was condemned by everyone. Stop! Li Zishuan grabbed Chung Chumo and tried to dissuade him. Chumo, don't be rash. This is the Black Armored Army's camp, not Chong and City. It's against the military rules to fight in private. But Chung Chumo pointed to the tent and anxiously stamped his feet. No buts. They're talking about me, not you. Besides, I think what they said makes sense. Li Zishuan interrupted Chung Chumo and said lightly, Calm down, Commander. Most of the soldiers are rough men in the army. They speak without thinking. Plus, they are simple-minded and can't understand your good intentions. Please calm your anger, Commander. Sun Jiping hurriedly stepped forward and cupped his fists towards Li Zishuan. Li Zishuan was expressionless. It was hard to tell whether he was happy or angry. After a moment of silence, he suddenly smiled and helped Sun Jiping up. Jiping, why do you say that? Am I so petty in your eyes? I wouldn't dare. Sun Jiping quickly bowed. That's enough. I'm just teasing you. Let's go in and take a look. Li Zishuan patted Sun Jiping's shoulder and walked towards the tent. Squad leader, I think we have to separate things. It's true that the Marquis of Yong and is a good official who has helped many people, but it doesn't mean that he's a good soldier. If we continue to train like this, I reckon that before we even enter the battlefield, we will already be covered in injuries. Why don't you go and talk to Commandant Sun? Shut up. Ding Dolly, you brat. Aren't you tired after a whole day of training? He quickly went to bed. He still had to continue training tomorrow. If you're not sleepy, then get on the ground and do 100 push-ups before you sleep. Yes. Who said I wasn't sleepy? He was going to sleep now. But the push-ups that Li Kanju made us do are too torturous. My arms have been sore for the past 2 days. If I don't make your arms sore, how can I prove that my new training method is effective? Just as the soldiers in the tent were discussing softly, Li Zishuan entered the tent and continued the soldier named Ding Dali's words with a smile. It's Kan Junli. Everyone in the tent was taken aback. They hurriedly got up from their beds and staggered toward Li Zishuan, then saluted him with a fist salute. Greetings, Kan Jun. Nobody expected Li Zishuan to visit their camp in the middle of the night. They were anxious, especially a big man with a scar on his face. He was trembling and had a layer of cold sweat on his forehead. He dare not look at Li Zishuan at all. It's not training time now, so you don't have to be so courteous. Li Zishuan raised his hands and said to everyone. The tent wasn't spacious, and each tent had 10 people living in it. The beds inside took up about 70 to 80% of the space in the tent. When Li Zishuan and his group walked in, it seemed even more crowded. Thank you, Kanjun. Everyone saluted with a fist salute and then stood up straight. You're a Ding Dali, right? It was precisely because the tent was small that Li Zishuan quickly noticed the strange expression on the scarred man's face. He walked forward and asked with a smile. Reporting to Kanjun, I am Ding Dali. Seeing that Li Zishuan recognized him, Ding Dali suddenly trembled and almost knelt down in front of Li Zishuan. Just now, he was still worried that Li Zishuan might not have heard what he said before. He still had a sliver of hope in his heart, but at this moment, Li Zishuan directly recognized him from among the 10 people. This completely shattered his wishful thinking. He thought to himself, Li Zishuan must have heard those words outside the tent, and now he's here to settle accounts. The Ding Dali now was completely different from the Ding Dali who dared to talk back to the heavens and the earth. Li Zishuan quietly looked at the person in front of him and didn't immediately speak. This silent atmosphere gave Ding Dali endless pressure, causing him to be unable to breathe for a moment. At this moment, he really wanted to slap himself twice. Who asked him to talk so much behind his back? With Li Zishuan's current position in the imperial court, if he wanted to kill him, it would be as easy as killing an ant. Thinking of this, Ding Dali's back was also wet with sweat. Why is there so much sweat on your face? This Kanjun only heard that you were injured. Could it be that you're sick? Lisa Xuan patted Sun Dali's shoulder and asked with a face full of concern. No, 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 your subordinate is not sick. Perhaps it's because the weather is too hot. Yes, it's because the weather is too hot. Ding Dali quickly raised his arm and wiped the cold sweat on his forehead as he denied it. That's good. Lisa Xuan nodded, then pointed at the couch in front of him and said, Go and sit down. This Kanjun will take a look at your injuries. Ding Dali was stunned when he heard this and did not react for a long time. Could it be that Lisa Xuan did not come to find trouble with him? How could this be? What? This Kanjun wants to treat your injuries. What are you still standing there for? Sun Jiping, who was at the side, could not stand it anymore. He slapped Ding Dali's head and reprimanded him in a bad mood. How could I trouble Kanjun? Your subordinate is only suffering from minor injuries. Moreover, the military doctor has already bandaged this subordinate's injuries. I dare not trouble Kanjun. Ding Dali finally came back to his senses. He quickly waved his hand at Lisa Xuan and rejected him. Lisa Xuan recognized this nameless soldier the moment he came in and immediately came over to take a look at his injuries. He had reason to suspect that Lisa Xuan had heard those words outside the tent and came in to take the opportunity to punish him in the name of treating his injuries. It was not impossible for him to directly lose an arm or break a leg. It had to be said that although this fellow's appearance was boorish, his heart was full of tricks. Not to mention anything else, even if Lisa Xuan wanted to take revenge on him, there were tens of thousands of ways. Why do you have to go through so much trouble? Sit down. This Kanjun is just taking a look. Moreover, don't forget that other than martial arts, this Kanjun also knows medical skills. Lisa Xuan would never have thought that this man in front of him would have so many tricks up his sleeve. He pointed at the couch in front of him and said, Ding Dali, get over there and sit down. This Sanjuan's medical skills are superb. I don't know how much virtue you've accumulated for you to be so lucky to be able to treat your injuries. At that moment, a tall man standing next to Ding Dali kicked him and said snappily, Yes, yes, yes. Squad leader, I'll go sit down now. Ding Dali hurriedly crawled to the couch and sat down. Then he said to Lisa Xuan, Thank you for joining the army. This subordinate's leg is injured. Then Ding Dali pulled up his pants and saw that his right knee was wrapped in a few rounds of white cloth. The white cloth was very new, so it was obvious that it was freshly bandaged. Lisa Xuan also sat down. He took a look and asked, Where exactly is the injury? Point it out to me. Since Ding Dali's injury was already treated, there was no need for him to take apart the bandaged wound again. Here, Ding Dali pointed at his calf 2 inches below his right knee and told Lisa Xuan. Lisa Xuan gently placed his hand where Ding Dali pointed at. The latter was initially worried that Lisa Xuan would poke at his wound, but to his surprise, when Lisa Xuan's palm landed on the wound on his leg, he did not feel the weight of Lisa Xuan's palm at all. The expected situation did not become a reality. Luckily, you didn't hit your knee, or else you'd have to lie in bed for half a month. Your bruises and wounds should be healed in 2 days. Lisa Xuan glanced indifferently at Ding Dali before he spoke. Through his inner strength, he could penetrate the gauze and see the injury on Ding Dali's knee. It was just as Sun Dali had said. It was just a small injury. There were some bruises around the wound. Although there was a cut, it was not deep. It was just a scratch. Thank you, Kanjun. Ding Dali breathed a sigh of relief and cupped his fists at Lisa Xuan. He didn't expect that Lisa Xuan would actually come to treat his injuries. This made him feel somewhat conflicted. Kanjun, your medical skills are really good. You didn't even remove the white cloth, and you already know that there's a bruise on Dali's leg. Sanjuan's medical skills are still as brilliant as before. The tall man, who was the squad leader of the 10 men, cupped his fists at Lisa Xuan. Lisa Xuan was puzzled. Why? Did you know me before? The squad leader immediately cupped his hands and answered, Commander, I was previously on duty in the Right Sentinel, and I accompanied General Chung to the north to rescue you a while ago. On the night of the battle with the Turks, I saw you treating the soldiers' injuries like you did today. When the academy was attacked and its confidential information was stolen, Li Zishuan mobilized his troops in the north to stop Wu Jie, but he did not expect the Turks to set up an ambush and enter Longmen Pass. Fortunately, Cheng Yaojin, Qin Xiong, Wang Renbiao, and the rest led the army to help in time, so Longmen Pass was saved and Li Zishuan was saved. However, that night, the imperial court's main army and the Turks' 50,000 wolf cavalrymen fought a life-and-death battle at Yonghe Pass, which resulted in heavy casualties. After the battle, Li Zishuan shuttled through the soldiers' tents to treat the injured soldiers. He was busy for the entire night and left a deep impression on many soldiers. Li Zishuan did not expect to meet his comrade from Longmen Pass here. He patted the squad leader's shoulder and asked excitedly, "What's your name? You were in the right sentinel before. What a coincidence." "Hey, I'm a soldier under my father, but why are you in the black armored army?" Cheng Chumo's interest was piqued, and he leaned forward to look at the squad leader seriously before he asked, "You're right." The squad leader cupped his hands at Li Zishuan and Cheng Chumo. "Colonel, my name is Wang Rong, and I'm from Jiangzhou. During the locust plague in Jiangzhou this year, I'd like to thank the Sky Rooster Brigade for providing timely relief." "Oh, you don't have to thank me. The Sky Rooster Brigade went north to provide relief because I was following His Majesty's order." Li Zishuan waved his hand. Afterward, seeing as they had stayed in the tent for quite some time, he stood up and said, "All right, you should all rest early. I know that your daily training is tougher than before, but if you want to become stronger, if you want to become the invincible black armored troops that will strike fear into the hearts of your enemies, you have to put in more sweat on the training ground." 10 days later, the 5th camp will compete with the 2nd camp. Let's see if you'd like to be stepped on by the 2nd camp and never be able to raise your heads or be stepped on by them. Then, he turned around and walked out of the tent, ignoring the stunned faces of the soldiers in the tent. Jiping, go to the next injured soldiers' camp. Chapter 1767. Join the army. It's late. Why don't we stop looking at the rest of the tents? Everyone suffered minor injuries anyway. It's not a big deal. The night was getting darker. A crescent moon hung in the sky. Li Zishuan and his men had already visited over 30 tents. Sun Jiping said to Li Zishuan at this time. Cheng Chumo thought that there would be something fun when he came out. However, after following a few tents, he realized that there wasn't anything fun. He told Li Zishuan and went back to sleep. Speaking of which, this guy was Li Zishuan's personal guard. This kind of personal guard was really incompetent. However, Yuchi Baolin didn't leave. He quietly followed behind Li Zishuan. "You said it yourself. There are a few above. There's no reason to leave them behind. Let's go. Let's hurry up and finish inspecting the rest of the soldiers. Try not to disturb the rest." Li Zishuan shook his head and said, "Jiping, you lead the way. Let's go to the next tent." "Yes, join the army." Sun Jiping saw that Li Zishuan had made up his mind. He didn't try to persuade him anymore. He cupped his fist and replied. Then, he turned around and walked towards a tent in the northwest corner. Actually, he more or less understood Li Zishuan's way of doing things. The harsh training in the E Battalion this afternoon made the soldiers have some complaints about Li Zishuan, especially the soldiers who were injured because of the training. They more or less complained about Li Zishuan in their hearts. Regarding this, he had heard the report from his men in the evening. Therefore, at this time, it was necessary to stabilize the morale of the soldiers. Li Zishuan visited the tents of the injured soldiers tonight and checked their injuries. This was an action to stabilize the morale of the soldiers. 42 injured soldiers have been visited. It's late now. Join the army, go and rest. Half an hour later, Li Zishuan and his men finally finished visiting the remaining injured soldiers. After walking out of the tent, Sun Jiping cupped his fist and said to Li Zishuan, "Join the army. It's late. Why don't we not watch the rest of them? Anyway, they're all just lightly injured. It's not a big deal." As the night deepened, a crescent moon hung in the sky. Li Zishuan and his group had already visited more than 30 tents. Sun Jiping said to Li Zishuan, Ching Chimo originally thought that there would be something fun to do, but after following a few tents, he realized that there wasn't anything fun to do, so he informed Li Zixuan and went back to sleep. Speaking of which, this guy was Li Zixuan's personal guard on the surface, and this kind of personal guard was really incompetent. Yuchi Baolin, on the other hand, didn't leave. He quietly followed behind Li Zixuan. You said it yourself. There's no reason to leave them behind. Let's go. Let's hurry up and finish inspecting the remaining soldiers. We should try our best not to disturb the rest of the soldiers. Li Zixuan shook his head and said, Jiping, you lead the way. Let's go to the next tent. Yes. Join the army. Sun Jiping saw that Li Zixuan had made up his mind, so he didn't try to persuade him anymore. He cupped his fist and replied, then turned around and walked toward the tent in the northwest corner. Actually, he more or less understood Li Zixuan's way of doing things. After today's harsh training in the E Battalion, the soldiers were quite dissatisfied with Li Zixuan, especially the soldiers who were injured because of the training. They more or less complained about Li Zixuan in their hearts. Regarding this, he had heard a report from his subordinates in the evening. Therefore, at this time, it was time to stabilize the morale of the soldiers. Li Zixuan visiting the tents of the injured soldiers and checking on their injuries was an action to stabilize the morale of the soldiers. 42 injured soldiers have been visited. It's not early anymore. Join the army, quickly go and rest. Half an hour later, Li Zixuan and his group finally finished inspecting the remaining injured soldiers. After walking out of the tent, Sun Jiping cupped his fist and said to Li Zixuan, Chapter 1768. General, I heard that the Wu Battalion lost more than a dozen war horses yesterday, and more than 40 soldiers were slightly injured. The war between the Tang Empire and the Turks hasn't even started yet, but our men and horses have already been lost on the drill ground. Don't you think that this is a little inappropriate? The next morning, before the soldiers started their training, the high-ranking officers of the Black Armored Army had already gathered in the commander's tent. At this moment, almost everyone was present except for Li Zixuan. After waiting for a while, Qiu Xingong walked up to Duan Jixuan and clasped his fist. Everyone in the tent was stunned. They knew that Qiu Xingong was going to use this opportunity to make things difficult for Li Zixuan. Although everyone knew what was going on, no one jumped out because they wanted to see Duan Jixuan's attitude first. How could Duan Jixuan not see through something that others could see clearly? His eyebrows moved slightly, but his expression was calm as he said, I know a little about this matter. Yesterday, Adjunct Li was testing whether the soldiers of the Wu Battalion would obey orders unconditionally, so he didn't give the order to stop the charge in time. As a result, the war horses collided with the wooden stakes, which led to the casualties. However, the soldiers and war horses were all wearing armor, so most of them were only slightly injured. It shouldn't be a big problem, right? Duan Jixuan was also present when the Wu Battalion was training yesterday. He approved of Li Zixuan's method of training. What was the most important thing in the army? It was to obey orders. If the soldiers couldn't even obey orders, how could they be called soldiers? They might as well be called bandits. On this point, Duan Jixuan felt that Li Zixuan's philosophy was the same as his. General, you can't say that. This is not the way to drill soldiers to obey military orders. Since ancient times, this Qiu has never heard of a general who would order his soldiers to ram their horses into wooden stakes. Seeing Duan Jixuan being so biased, Qiu Xingong couldn't sit still anymore and quickly refuted. Great General, I heard that yesterday the V Battalion lost more than a dozen war horses and more than 40 soldiers were slightly injured. The war between the Tang and the Turks hasn't even started yet, but our men and horses have already been lost on the drill ground. Don't you think this is a little inappropriate? The next morning, before the soldiers had even started their training, the higher-ups of the black armored troops had already gathered in the commander's tent. At this moment, almost everyone was present except for Li Zixuan. After waiting for a while, Qiu Xingong stepped forward and cupped his fist towards Duan Jixuan. The faces of the generals in the tent turned cold. They knew that Qiu Xingong was going to use this opportunity to make things difficult for Li Zixuan. Although everyone was well aware of this, no one jumped out because they wanted to see Duan Jishuan's attitude first. How could Duan Jishuan not see things that others could see clearly? His eyebrows twitched slightly, but his expression remained the same. This general has some understanding of this matter. Yesterday, Adjunct Lee was testing whether the soldiers of the V Battalion would obey the military order unconditionally, so he didn't give the order to stop the charge in time. As a result, the war horses crashed into the wooden stakes, resulting in the casualties. However, the soldiers and war horses were all wearing armor, so most of them were only slightly injured. It shouldn't be a big problem, right? Yesterday, when the V Battalion was undergoing the charging training, Duan Jishuan was also present. He was very supportive of Li Zishuan's method of training. What was the most important thing in the army? It was to obey the military order. If the soldiers couldn't even obey the military order, how could they still be called soldiers? They might as well be called bandits. On this point, Duan Jishuan felt that Li Zishuan's philosophy was the same as his. Great General, you can't say this. This is not the way to drill soldiers to obey military orders. Since ancient times, this Chiu has never heard of a general who would order his soldiers to ram their horses into wooden stakes. Seeing Duan Jishuan being so biased, Chiu Xingong couldn't sit still anymore and quickly refuted. Chapter 1769. General, what do you think of this competition? Li Zishuan asked Duan Jishuan in the commander's tent of the Black Armored Army. Duan Jishuan put down the booklet in his hand and raised his head. There was a trace of admiration in his eyes as he laughed. Li Zishuan's competition method is indeed novel. I have never heard of an army going into battle without rations. This method can train the soldiers' ability to survive in the wilderness and also allow the generals and soldiers of both sides to display their strengths in the competition. I think this method is very feasible. I will get someone to make a few copies of this booklet and distribute them to the generals of each battalion. Just now, Lieutenant Li only gave you a general introduction. This booklet specifies what you can do, what you can't do, what counts as a violation, and what counts as a victory during the competition. The commanding generals of each battalion, especially the commanding generals of the 2nd Battalion and the 5th Battalion, should study it carefully. Don't violate the rules during the competition. Otherwise, you will be punished according to military law. The rules that Li Zishuan proposed not only included military formations, wilderness survival, but also military strategy. Duan Jishuan's eyes lit up. Compared to this, the previous military exercises were too one-sided and superficial. He wanted to use this opportunity to see the results of this method. If it was good, Duan Jishuan planned to implement it in the Black Armored Army in the future. Yes, sir. Zhang Shigue, Sun Tao, Zhang Kanyan, Lu De, and Sun Jiping. The 5 captains cupped their fists and accepted Duan Jishuan's order. However, the competition between the 2nd Battalion and the 5th Battalion requires them to leave the city. It's no small matter for an army to leave the city. I need to report this to the Emperor first. After the Emperor approves, the competition between the 5th Battalion and the 2nd Battalion is set. Before this, the 2 battalions will need to be well trained and prepared. General, what do you think of this competition method? In the commander's tent of the Black Armored Army, Li Zishuan looked at Duan Jishuan and cupped his fists. Duan Jishuan put down the booklet in his hand and raised his head. There was a trace of admiration in his eyes. He laughed. Li Zishuan's competition method is really novel. I have never heard of an army going into battle without rations. This method can not only train the officers' and soldiers' ability to survive in the wilderness, but it can also reproduce actual combat to the greatest extent, allowing the main generals and officers of both sides to display their strengths in the competition. This general believes that this method is very feasible. I will get someone to make a few copies of this booklet and distribute them to the generals of each battalion. Just now, Lieutenant Li only gave you a general introduction. This booklet specifies what you can do, what you can't do, what counts as a violation, and what counts as a victory during the competition. The commanding generals of each battalion, especially the commanding generals of the 2nd Battalion and the 5th Battalion, should study it carefully. Don't violate the rules during the competition. Otherwise, you'll be punished according to military law. The rules of the Black Armored Army's rules. The previous military exercises in the armies were of armies is militaries armies militaries. He wanted to use this opportunity to see the effects of this method. If the results were good, Duan Jishuan planned to implement it in the Black Armored Army. Yes, sir. Zhang Shige, Sun Tao, Zhang Kangyan, Lu De, and Sun Jiping. The 5 captains cupped their fists and accepted Duan Jishuan's order. However, the 2nd Battalion and the 5th Battalion have to leave the city for the competition. It's no small matter for the army to leave the city. I need to report to the Emperor first. After the Emperor approves, the competition between the 5th Battalion and the 2nd Battalion will be set. Chapter 1770. Lantian County. Although this was just a small county next to Chang, and the scale of the city was far from the capital, Chang'an City, but the scale of business here was slowly catching up with Chang'an City. The center of Tang Dynasty's business was quietly shifting towards Lantian County. Behind all this, it was all because Li Zishuan was the lord of Lantian County. Under his guidance, Lantian County established a Department of Commerce to take over the cases of merchants and maintain the business environment in the city. The merchants, who were originally at the bottom of society, received equal political treatment with ordinary citizens in Lantian County. This political treatment not only referred to their social status, but also their children could attend Lantian County's official school. To the merchants of the world, this was an opportunity that they could only dream of. Therefore, in the course of time, there were more and more shops, inns, and restaurants in Lantian County. Therefore, today's announcement in Datong Daily, Yanhuang Chamber of Commerce is organizing a donation drive, caused a stir in Lantian County that was not smaller than Chang'an City. Boss Zhang, what do you think of the news today? In a silk shop, 2 middle-aged men were chatting. What do I think? What did I think? This matter was initiated by the Yanhuang Chamber of Commerce, which means that it was instructed by Marquis. We can do business in Lantian County, and our business is getting more and more prosperous. Isn't it all because of Marquis's grace? Just based on this old man will donate a few hundred strings of cash to this donation drive. Boss Zhang is so righteous. That's exactly what I was thinking. Marquis's treatment of us merchants is indescribable. If not for Marquis, would my little brat be able to attend an official school? I only hope that the little brat can work hard and get into Yanhuang College in a few years. Then, I will have nothing else to ask for in this life. For this donation drive, if not for anything else, for Marquis, I will donate 500 strings of cash. Lantian County. Although this was just a small county adjacent to Chang, and the scale of the city was far inferior to the imperial capital, Chang'an, the scale of the business activities here was slowly catching up with Chang'an. The business center of the Tang Empire was quietly shifting towards Lantian County. Behind all of this, it was all because Li Zishuan was the lord of Lantian County. Under his guidance, Lantian County established the Department of Commerce, which specialized in taking over the cases of merchants and maintaining the business environment in the city. The merchants, who were originally at the bottom of the social ladder, received equal political treatment with the common people in Lantian County. This political treatment not only referred to their social status, but also their children could also attend Lantian County's official school. To the world's merchants, this was an opportunity that they could only dream of. As a result, the number of shops, inns, and restaurants in Lantian County increased. Therefore, today's announcement on Datong Daily, the Yanhuang Chamber of Commerce intends to hold a fundraising event, had caused a stir in Lantian County that was not any smaller than Chang'an City. Mr. Zhang, what do you think about the news in today's newspaper? In a silk shop, 2 middle-aged men were chatting. What do you think? What can I think? This matter was initiated by the Yanhuang Chamber of Commerce, which means that it was incited by Marquis. For us to be able to do business in Lantian County, and our business is getting more and more prosperous. Isn't it all because of Marquis's grace? Just based on this old man will donate a few hundred strings of cash to this fundraising event. Mr. Zhang is so righteous. That's what I think as well. Marquis's treatment of us merchants is indescribable. If not for Marquis, would my little brat be able to attend an official school? I only hope that the little brat can work hard and be admitted to Yanhuan College in a few years. Then, I will have no other wishes in this life. For this fundraising event, if not for anything else, for Marquis, I will donate 500 strings of cash. Chapter 1771. Your Majesty, General Duan requests an audience. After the morning court session, Lier had just arrived at Ganlu Hall when a chamberlain quickly walked in and cupped his fists. In recent days, most of the officials had been busy preparing for the war with the Turks. This involved the cooperation between the various yamens, and most of this was done in private. There were very few matters that needed to be discussed in the imperial court, so the morning court sessions have been dismissed early in the past few days. HM, Duan Jishuan, summon him in. Li Er's heart skipped a beat, and he hurriedly ordered the chamberlain. Yes, your majesty. The chamberlain cupped his fists and left. After a while, Duan Jishuan quickly walked in and bowed to Li Er. This old official greets your majesty. Ha! You may rise, Minister Duan. Li Er smiled and raised his hand to Duan Jishuan. Duan Jishuan straightened up, and Li Er went straight to the point. Minister Duan, do you have any business in the palace today? Currently, the various barracks in Chang and were undergoing closed training, and the generals of the various armies were stationed in the barracks. If there was no urgent matter, they could not leave the barracks. Now that Duan Jishuan had come to the palace, it meant that he had something to report. Your Majesty, this old official does indeed have something to report. Duan Jishuan cupped his fists and said, ever since Li Kanjun joined the Black Armored Army, a new set of training exercises has been introduced. However, some of the generals in the barracks have doubts about this new set of exercises, so only 3 of the 5 barracks are using the new set of exercises for their daily training. In order to prove which is better, General Chiu and Li Kanjun plan to have a competition between the 2 barracks using the new set of exercises and the old set of exercises. These are the specific rules of this competition. Your Majesty, please take a look. Duan Jishuan then took out a small booklet. It was the detailed explanation of the competition that Li Zishuan had given him in the morning. Your Majesty, General Duan requests an audience. After the morning court session, Lier had just arrived at Ganlu Hall when a chamberlain quickly walked in and cupped his fists. In recent days, most of the officials had been busy preparing for the war with the Turks. This involved the cooperation between the various yamens, and most of this was done in private. There were very few matters that needed to be discussed in the imperial court, so the morning court sessions have been dismissed early in the past few days. HM, Duan Jishuan, summon him in. Li Er's heart skipped a beat when he heard this, and he hurriedly said to the inner attendant, Here. The attendant cupped his hands in acknowledgement and turned to leave. Not long after, Duan Jishuan walked in quickly. He bowed to Li Er and said, This old subject greets your majesty. Huh. Minister Duan, you may rise. Li Er had a slight smile on his face and raised his hand towards Duan Jishuan. Duan Jishuan complied and straightened his body. Li Er went straight to the point and asked, Dear official Duan, what business do you have in the palace today? Now, all the barracks guards in Chang and were undergoing closed training, and the chief generals of each army were also stationed in the barracks. They were not allowed to leave the barracks unless there was something important. Now that Duan Jishuan had come to the palace, it meant that he had something to report. Your Majesty, I do have something to report. Duan Jishuan cupped his hands and said, Ever since Li Kanjun joined the Black Armored Army, a new set of training exercises has been introduced. However, some of the generals in the barracks have doubts about this new set of exercises, so currently, only 3 of the 5 barracks are using the new set of exercises for their daily training. In order to prove which one is better, General Chiu and Li Kanjun intend to have a competition between the two barracks using the new set of exercises and the old set of exercises. These are the specific rules of this competition. Your Majesty, please take a look. After that, Duan Jishuan took out a small booklet from his bosom. It was the detailed explanation of the competition that Li Zishuan had given him in the morning. Chapter 1772. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Hang up all these red lanterns in the residence. You guys, go and see if there's anything left to clean. If the guests come tomorrow and find the house dusty, you won't have a good time. Why is there an old chair here? Hurry up and leave. Change everything to a new mahogany chair. You. I'm talking about you. Go to the kitchen and see if all the ingredients have been bought. Lan Province, Yong County, Provincial Governor's Residence. At this moment, the entire provincial governor's residence was bustling with activity. Red satin, lanterns, and ribbons decorated the entire residence, and it was brimming with joy. Tomorrow was the day of Provincial Governor Wang Runbiao's wedding, and the bride was the woman of his dreams, Li Jingchu. Speaking of which, it was truly not easy for this pair of ill-fated lovebirds to end up together. A few days ago, Princess Tang had tried to break them up because of Li Jingchu's lowly status, and the two of them had almost gone to the Yellow Springs. Fortunately, Li Zishuan had sent an urgent letter to Lan Province, allowing him to reverse Princess Tang and Wang Yu's attitudes. Otherwise, Princess Tang and the elders of the Wang clan of Taiyuan would never have agreed to this marriage. Master, Princess Royal, the residence has been cleaned up. We're just waiting for the bride to enter the house tomorrow. The two of you can rest assured. In the backyard, Wang Yu was chatting with Princess Tang and in a pavilion. At this moment, a maidservant came over and bowed to Wang Yu and Princess Tang and, go and keep a close eye on it. Although this is Lan Province, as the eldest son of the Wang clan of Taiyuan, nothing can go wrong with his wedding. Otherwise, we will lose face for the entire Wang clan. Princess Tang glanced at the maidservant and sternly said, Hurry, hurry, hurry. Hang up all these red lanterns in the residence. You guys, go and see if there's anything left to clean. If the guests come tomorrow and find the house dusty, you won't have a good time. Why is there an old chair here? Hurry up and leave. Change everything to a new mahogany chair. You. I'm talking about you. Go to the kitchen and see if all the ingredients have been bought. Lan Province, Yong County, Provincial Governor's Office. At this moment, the entire provincial governor's manor was bustling with activity. Red silk, colorful satin, lanterns, and streamers decorated the entire manor. It was brimming with a joyous atmosphere because tomorrow was the wedding of their provincial governor Wang Runbiao, and the bride was Li Jingchu, whom Wang Runbiao yearned for even in his dreams. Speaking of which, it was not easy for this pair of ill-fated lovebirds to end up together. A few days ago, Princess Tang tried to break them up because of Li Zishuan's lowly status, and the two of them almost died together. Fortunately, Li Zishuan wrote a letter and rushed to Lan Province in a timely manner, thus reversing Princess Tang and Wang Yu's attitudes. Otherwise, Princess Tang and some of the elders of the Wang family of Taiyuan would never have agreed to this marriage. Master, eldest princess, everything in the manor has been cleaned up. We're just waiting for the bride to enter the manor tomorrow. Don't worry. In the backyard, Wang Yu was chatting with Princess Tang and in the pavilion when a woman who looked like a servant girl came over and bowed to Wang Yu and Princess Tang. Keep a close watch. Although this is Lan Province, my cousin is the eldest son of the Wang family of Taiyuan. Nothing can go wrong with his wedding, or else he will lose face for the entire Wang family. Princess Tang glanced at the servant girl and sternly said, Chapter 1773. Your son will remember father's teachings today and will never forget them. In the sweet nectar hall, after hearing Li Er's heartfelt advice, Li Chengxian cupped his hands and said solemnly, Li Er nodded his head approvingly. Li Chengxian's heart skipped a beat, and he cupped his hands towards Li Er again. Father, Your son has previously subscribed to a portion of the Yin Huang Chamber of Commerce's shares and Strange Culture's shares. Now, I can be considered a member of the Yin Huang Chamber of Commerce. Although the Eastern Palace has not been involved in the Yin Huang Chamber of Commerce's business for the past year, Lil Xian still had people send over the Eastern Palace's dividends every month. Now, your son can take out about 30,000 strings of cash. For this donation drive, your son would like the shopkeeper of the Royal Shop, Craftsman Pavilion, to donate 30,000 strings of cash. Firstly, although your son is not in the business world, I still hold shares in the Yin Huang Chamber of Commerce and can be considered a part of the Yin Huang Chamber of Commerce. Now that little Xian is using the name of the Yin Huang Chamber of Commerce to call for the great Tang's merchants to raise funds for the country, your son should respond. Secondly, these days, Father has been working hard on the northern expedition and has not been able to sleep at night. Your son and mother are both worried about your health. This 30,000 strings of cash can be considered your son's contribution to the army. I hope it can share your worries. The Craftsman Pavilion in the west of Chang and city was a shop run by the royal family. In fact, in the past dynasties, the main members of the royal family, such as the emperor, empress, crown prince, and so on, although they would not openly engage in business, they would secretly send people to run some shops to make up for their expenses. However, this money was a hidden income after all. No one would speak of it openly, especially as the crown prince. That was even more so. Think about it. Why would you, a country's crown prince, earn so much money in private for? Could it be that you want to secretly cultivate power and usurp the throne and rebel? But today, in front of Lier, Li Chengxian had openly revealed his little treasury. This kind of father-son relationship could not be said to be fake. Your son will remember father's teachings today and will never forget them. In the sweet nectar hall, after listening to Lier's heartfelt advice, Li Chengxian solemnly cupped his hands and said, Lier nodded approvingly. At this moment, Li Chengxian's heart stirred. He cupped his hands towards Lier and said, Father, I have previously purchased a portion of the Yin Huang Chamber of Commerce's shares, as well as the shares of Strange Culture. Now, I can be considered a member of the Yin Huang Chamber of Commerce. Although the Eastern Palace has not been involved in the business of the Yin Huang Chamber of Commerce for the past year, Little Xian still sends over the dividends that belong to the Eastern Palace every month. Right now, I can take out about 30,000 strings of cash. For this donation drive, I would like to ask the shopkeeper of the Royal Shop, the House of Craftsmen, to donate the 30,000 strings of coins. Firstly, although I'm not in the business world, I still hold shares in the Yin Huang Chamber of Commerce and can be considered a part of the Yin Huang Chamber of Commerce. Now, that little Xian has used the name of the Yin Huang Chamber of Commerce to call on the great Tang's merchants to raise military funds for the country. I should respond. Secondly, these days, Father has been working hard on the northern expedition and has not been able to sleep at night. Mother and I are both worried about Father's health. This 30,000 strings of cash can be considered as my contribution to the army. I hope that it can share Father's burdens. The House of Craftsmen in the west of Chang and city was a shop run by the royal family. In fact, in the past dynasties, the main members of the royal family, such as the emperor, the empress, the crown prince, and so on, although they did not openly engage in business, they would secretly send people to run some shops to earn some money to make up for their expenses. However, this money was after all a hidden income. No one would speak of it openly, especially if it was the crown prince. That was even more so. Think about it. As the heir to the throne of a country, why would you secretly earn so much money for? Could it be that you wanted to secretly cultivate power and usurp the throne and rebel? But today, in front of Lier, Li Chengxian had openly revealed his little treasury. This kind of father-son relationship could not be said to be fake. Chapter 1774. General, are you looking for us? Sun Tao and Zhang Kengyan walked in from the side tent of the black armored army and greeted Xiao Xingong. Yes. Xiao Xingong put down the document in his hand, raised his head, and said to the two of them, Sit down. Thank you, General. The two of them cupped their fists and bowed. Then, they knelt down on the cushions on either side. Xiao Xingong opened his mouth and said, General, The army just came back. They said that His Majesty has agreed to the competition between the two camps in 9 days. Sun Tao, are you confident in this competition? General, in terms of strength, the soldiers of the second camp are better than the soldiers of the Wu camp. Therefore, I am confident that I can defeat the Wu camp. Sun Tao cupped his fists and said without hesitation. This guy always liked to be straightforward. He didn't like to beat around the bush, and he didn't like to be humble. He felt that if he could defeat the Wu camp, he would definitely win. Good. I didn't misjudge you. Qiu Xingong was overjoyed. He laughed out loud and said, Sun Tao, as long as you can defeat the Wu camp, I will reward you generously. Thank you, General. Sun Tao bowed and said. Seeing the two of them so optimistic, Zhang Kongyan couldn't help but interrupt. General, I think that this competition is not as simple as it seems. Li Zishuan has always been cunning. Before he made the rules of the competition, it is impossible for him not to know the difference in strength between the two battalions. The reason why he dared to propose this competition in front of so many generals means that he must have made thorough preparations. We have to be on guard against him. Also, I have been worried about one thing. Will Li Zishuan participate in this competition personally? According to rumors, he is a master of martial arts. If he participates in the competition, there will be many uncertainties. Hearing this, Qiu Xingong's face instantly turned serious. After a moment of silence, he opened his mouth and said, Kong Yin, your worries are not unfounded. In the morning, this old man thought that I had guessed the little tricks that kid was playing behind the scenes. I didn't expect that I had overlooked such an important point. In a while, this general will go and tell the general that he must not let this kid participate in the battle personally. He is an adjutant of the army, not the general of the Wu battalion. General is wise. Zhang Kunyan smiled and bowed to flatter Qiu Xingong. The only person he could rely on in the black armored army was Qiu Xingong. His future also depended on Qiu Xingong. That was why he was so hard-working when he came up with a plan. There is one more thing. Qiu Xingong focused his attention and looked at Sun Tao, continuing, Sun Tao, in the next few days there will be an additional combat training for the B battalion. As for the specifics of the training, you can secretly go to the A battalion in the afternoon to take a look. Just as they train, the B battalion will also train accordingly. Do you hear me? Hearing this, Sun Tao was shocked. He widened his eyes and said, General, didn't we agree to follow the original training method? If we suddenly, wouldn't we will for the ridicule? Besides, if I sneak peeked if I get caught. Qiu Xingong glared at him and said in annoyance, What are you laughing at? Li Zishuan wasn't the one who created this combat training. The military had it for a long time. Letting the 2nd Battalion train in close combat techniques is to ensure that you won't panic when you encounter wild beasts in the competition 9 days later. Otherwise, not only will you not be able to hunt your prey, you might even be chased by the wild beasts in the forest. If that happens, you don't need to compete anymore. Just admit defeat and don't embarrass me. Seeing that Qiu Xingong was angry, Sun Tao shrunk his neck and admitted defeat. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, sir. Adjutant, you are very observant. To be able to see through Li Zishuan's rules so quickly, I am really impressed. At this moment, Zhang Kongyan finally understood what Qiu Xingong meant when he said that he had guessed the little trick the kid was trying to pull behind his back. He was referring to the combat training recently promoted by the Wu battalion. Thus, with a smile on his face, he gave Qiu Xingong another compliment. This might just be one of the ways Li Zishuan tampered with the rules of the competition. The two of you need to think about it carefully for the next 2 days. If you discover that the rules of the competition are disadvantageous to us, report to this old man immediately. Qiu Xingong nodded his head and ordered, Yes, General. Sun Tao cupped his fist and replied in a muffled voice. Zhang Kongyan rolled his eyes and said, General, I feel that instead of looking for problems with the rules passively, why don't we take the initiative to attack and let Li Zishuan be busy with his own matters? When the competition starts, we can win without a fight. Oh, tell me, how should we take the initiative to attack? Qiu Xingong was shocked and asked quickly. Hee. I have a plan that can make the hearts of the Wu battalion fall into chaos before the start of the competition. Zhang Kangyan smiled evilly. This guy was also very alert. He knew that the tents in the camp weren't soundproof. In order to prevent what he was going to say from being heard by others, he stood up and walked to Qiu Xingong and whispered, "Tell me quickly." Qiu Xingong's eyes flashed, and he couldn't wait to ask. At this moment, Sun Tao also couldn't help but stand up and move closer to the two of them. Zhang Kengyan smiled and whispered, "General, the training in the Wu camp is very strict, and there's so many soldiers who were injured yesterday. There must be a lot of people who have complaints about Li Zishuan. We can send people to the Wu camp to sow discord between them and Li Zishuan. This will affect the rest of the soldiers in the Wu camp. When there are too many of them, Li Zishuan will lose his prestige in the Wu camp and even in the Black Armored Army. Once the morale of the soldiers is disrupted, even if Li Zishuan is still alive, he will still lose this competition. If this can cause a mutiny in the Wu camp, then Li Zishuan's days in the Black Armored Army will come to an end. At that time, it will be easy for us to win the competition." It had to be said that this guy was too cunning. He didn't have the confidence to fight force with force, so he wanted to use tricks. Hee. Good plan. Good plan. After listening, Qiu Xingong pondered for a moment and suddenly laughed. Sun Tao couldn't help but say, "General, I think that it is impossible for the second camp to lose this competition. Zhang Kangyan's plan is completely despicable and not what a real man would do. I don't think it is necessary. If we want to win, we should win fair and square." This fellow had a straightforward temperament and would say whatever came to his mind. As soon as he finished speaking, Zhang Kangyan's face instantly darkened, and he almost vomited blood. "Sun Tao, you bastard. I am obviously helping you. Don't be so ungrateful. How can you be so sure that the second camp will win this competition? If we lose, can you bear the consequences?" Zhang Kangyan pointed at Sun Tao and said in exasperation, "Humph, why can't I bear the consequences? If we lose this competition, I, Sun Tao, am willing to bear the consequences. If we win with this scheme, then I would rather lose to the Wu camp." Sun Tao snorted and turned his head away and said angrily, "Shut up." Qiu Xingong's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. At this moment, he couldn't hold it in any longer and interrupted Sun Tao, "We must win this competition. If we lose, Li Zishuan will be able to control the Black Armored Army from now on. By then, both of you can forget about having a good life. Sun Tao, you don't have to get involved in the matter of sowing discord in the Wu camp. Just focus on training the second camp soldiers. Leave this matter to Kang Yin." "Yes, General." Although Sun Tao was extremely unwilling in his heart, in the face of the powerful Qiu Xingong, he could only swallow this reluctance into his stomach. Qiu Xingong looked at Zhang Kangyan and ordered, "Kang Yin, go back to the camp and pick a few smart men. It would be best if they know the people from the Wu camp. Let them sneak into the Wu camp during lunchtime and secretly instigate the soldiers who were injured yesterday. Let them be dissatisfied with Li Zishuan." Zhang Kangyan clasped his fist and said, "Yes, sir." "Good. All right, all of you are dismissed." Qiu Xingong nodded and waved his hand. "Jiping, how was the training in the morning?" Noon, outside the cafeteria of the Wu camp, a group of burly men squatted on the empty ground and wolfed down the unappetizing big pot of rice. Li Zishuan, Sun Jiping, Cheng Chumo, and the others squatted together again. Li Zishuan took the opportunity to ask Sun Jiping during the meal break. In the morning, he was called over by Zhang, Shigui, and Luda. According to Zhang Shigui, he was the Black Armored Army's adjutant, and not just the Wu camp's adjutant. Since the A camp and D camp had also chosen to use the new training method, then, as the adjutant, he couldn't just be biased towards the Wu camp. Therefore, he mainly guided the A camp and D camp's training in the morning. Oh, the morale of the soldiers is better than yesterday. They're also more serious in their training. It must be the effect of last night's patrol. Sun Jiping swallowed the food in his mouth and replied, "That's good." Li Zishuan couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. There were two sides to everything. If there was a good side, then there would naturally be a bad side. Although high-intensity military training could increase the strength of the soldiers in a short period of time, it could also cause the soldiers to be conflicted. Once there were more and more people who were conflicted, then the morale of the army would be messed up. Once the morale of the army was messed up, then even the best training method would be useless. Li Zixuan's new training method was actually a risky move. If it wasn't done well, then it would be inviting trouble to himself. But looking at the current situation of the Black Armored Army, if they wanted to form a fighting force in a short period of time, then they had to take the risk. But the current result was still good. It seemed like it was still necessary to give the soldiers some thought. Li Zixuan thought to himself, this guy wanted to do a job again. Does the army have a map of the Nyosho mountain area? After coming back from his thoughts, Li Zixuan asked again. Sun Jiping thought for a while and nodded. I do have this, but I don't have it here. You can go ask the general. The general will definitely have it. Good. Then I'll go find General Duan later. Li Zixuan nodded and said, in these 2 days, I'll make a sand table based on the map of the Nyosho mountain area. As for the training of the Wu Battalion, you have to worry more about it. If I have time, I'll come over to take a look. After the sand table is done, if you have nothing to do at night, you can come to my tent to deduce the art of war. The Nyosho mountain he was talking about was not the famous scenic spot around Nanjing in the future. The Nyosho mountain he was talking about was located in the southwest of Chang. It was a branch of the Zhongnan Mountains and also belonged to the Qinling Mountains. It was under the jurisdiction of Chang and County and was about 30 li away from Chang'an City. Chang and County belonged to the hinterland of the Wei River Plain. It was located at the south of the 800 Li Qinchuan. To the south was the Qinling Mountains, and to the north was the Wei River. In the Tang Dynasty, soil erosion was not so serious. There were towering trees everywhere. At the foot of the Zhongnan Mountains was a primeval forest. The reason why Li Zixuan chose the Nyosho Mountain as the location for the Wu Battalion and E Battalion was also very thoughtful. First of all, although there were many mountains near Chang, and there were more hills, there were not many mountains that were of a large scale. If you counted carefully, there were only Mount Li and Nyosho Mountain. But in the area of Mount Li, there was the Emperor's Palace. Normally, when the Emperor organized a hunting trip, he would come here. In this era, instead of saying that Mount Li was a primeval forest, it was better to say that it was a large tourist attraction. It was not suitable to have a military exercise here, but the Nyosho Mountain was different. There was no Emperor's Palace here. Usually, there were no traces of people. There were many kinds of wild animals in the forest, such as jackals, wolves, tigers, and leopards. It was a good place to train the army. When marching to war, it was important to pay attention to the right time, the right place, and the right people. Before this, Li Zixuan had only heard that there was such a mountain in the southwest of Chang'an City. However, he had never been there personally. Naturally, he did not know the specific terrain. Therefore, he needed to understand the terrain of the Nyosho Mountain before the competition. Only then could he formulate targeted tactics. Sand table? Join the army. What is this sand table? Sun Jiping was confused. Back then, Li Zixuan had made a sand table for the academy. It could be said that Li Er was completely stunned. Later, Li Jing wanted to promote the sand table in the army. However, in the past year, there was no war in the Tang Empire. The sand table had no place to be used. It only existed in the study rooms of Li Er and Li Jing. Naturally, Sun Jiping had never heard of it. Hey, I know this sand table. Using sand to build the terrain of a place, it looks like the real thing. Chung Chumo laughed and showed off. As a student of the academy and the son of Chung Yao Jin, he naturally knew what a sand table was. Well, it's similar to what Chumo said. Jiping, you'll know when it's done. When the time comes, let's deduce how to march and arrange the army on the sand table. Li Zixuan nodded. Yes, join the army. Sun Jiping quickly replied. Join the army. The general wants you to go to the commander's tent. At this moment, a soldier came over and saluted Li Zixuan respectfully. The general? Li Zixuan was puzzled, but he did not hesitate. After putting the bowl in his hand beside Chung Chumo, he stood up and said, Okay, I'll go now. Chapter 1775. General, are you looking for me? The journey from the Wu barracks kitchen to the Black Armored Army's marshal's tent was about a mile long. Li Zixuan walked quickly and arrived at the marshal's tent in no time. He saw Duan Jixuan sitting at the head of the table and Qiu Xingong sitting at the side. He cupped his fist and bowed to Qiu Xingong. I hope I didn't disturb Marshal Li's lunch. Duan Jixuan chuckled and said with a kind face. Qiu Xingong frowned. He felt that Duan Jixuan's attitude towards Li Zixuan had changed greatly, but he couldn't pinpoint exactly what had changed. General, you must be joking. Military affairs are more important. What's a lunch? Li Zixuan was also curious. Qiu Xingong didn't call him over just to ask if he had eaten, right? How boring would that be? Thinking of this, he cupped his fist and asked, General, is there anything I can help you with? Take a seat first. Duan Jixuan pointed to the cushion at the side and glanced at Qiu Xingong meaningfully. It's not me who is looking for you. It's General Qiu who is looking for you. Xingong, since you're the one who raised the question, you should talk to Marshal Li. Duan Jixuan was old and shrewd. He wasn't willing to be used by Qiu Xingong. This was a direct conflict between Qiu Xingong and Li Zixuan. He only wanted to be the judge and didn't want to be stuck between the two. Qiu Xingong's face stiffened. The reason why he directly looked for Duan Jixuan and not Li Zixuan was because he wanted Duan Jixuan to help him facilitate this matter. Now that Duan Jixuan directly pushed him out, his attitude was very obvious. I'm here today for one thing. I hope Marshal Li can clear up my doubts. Since Duan Jixuan had already put it this way, Qiu Xingong had no choice but to speak up as well. He looked at Li Zixuan with a slightly unnatural expression and said in a deep voice, regarding the competition 9 days from now, Li Kanjun has already explained the specific rules of the competition to the generals in the army. However, I wonder if Li Kanjun plans to personally participate in this competition. Hearing this, Li Zixuan's eyes flashed with understanding. This old man was worried that his participation would affect the game balance, so he came to complain to Duan Jixuan. Marshal Qiu, do you think that I should participate in this competition? Li Zixuan's eyes flashed with ridicule as he looked at Qiu Xingong and asked. Qiu Xingong's face froze. After a moment of silence, he cleared his throat and said seriously, this competition is between the 2nd Battalion and the 5th Battalion. It is also a competition between the old and new training methods of the Black Armored Army. Adjunct Li is an adjunct of the Black Armored Army, not the general or sergeant of the 5th Battalion. So for the sake of fairness, I think. Actually, Marshal Qiu doesn't have to worry. I have never thought of participating in this competition personally. Li Zixuan didn't wait for Qiu Xingong to finish speaking and interrupted him when he heard Qiu Xingong's dignified words. You. Qiu Xingong's expression instantly became abnormally ugly. Li Zixuan's words could be considered as directly tearing apart the disguise on his face, causing him to become a complete villain in front of Duan Jixuan. How could he not be angry? Taking 2 deep breaths, Qiu Xingong suppressed the anger in his heart and regained his composure. He looked at Li Zixuan and said with a fake smile, Marshal Li must be joking. What is there to worry about? I'm just thinking about the fairness of the competition. I'm not biased towards any side. Oh, so General Qiu is so selfless. I'm in awe. Li Zixuan clasped his hands and said with a smile. However, there was a hint of sarcasm in his voice. It was obvious that he was mocking Qiu Xingong. Then, without waiting for Qiu Xingong to react, he continued. However, in this competition, even though I won't be personally fighting with the 2nd Battalion soldiers, I will be in the Wu Battalion's tent to help them strategize. Just like what General Qiu said, this competition is a competition between the new and old training methods of the Black Armored Army. As the Marshal Qiu, I am in charge of the training of the army. The Wu Battalion is the executor of a new training method. It shouldn't be out of line for me to help them strategize, right? Qiu Xingong, who was about to explode in anger, couldn't help but frown when he heard the second half of Li Zixuan's words. If it was in the past, he definitely wouldn't have taken Li Zishuan seriously. Not to mention letting Li Zishuan strategize for the Wu Battalion. Even if Li Zishuan were to fight alongside the Wu Battalion soldiers, he wouldn't have cared, because at that time, in his eyes, Li Zishuan was just a brat who didn't know anything about military affairs. So what if he had a body full of bravery? On the battlefield, individual bravery was useless. But now, after seeing Li Zishuan's performance in the Black Armored Army, Qiu Xingong was starting to panic. New training methods, tactics, unity, etc. These were not things that a brat who had just entered the army for a few days could do. Under such circumstances, he didn't dare to let Li Zishuan participate in the competition between the 2nd Battalion and the Wu Battalion. He didn't dare to take the risk. Of course not. While Qiu Xingong was hesitating, Duan Zhishuan opened his mouth and said calmly, "I have said from the start that the daily training of the Black Armored Army will be arranged by Li Zishuan. This competition will be a test of the new and old training methods. As the one who proposed the new training methods, Li Zishuan should participate." Grand General. Hearing this, Qiu Xingong was shocked. He wanted to stop Duan Zhishuan, but Qiu Xingong waved his hand and interrupted. "Xingong, Li Zishuan has already agreed that he won't participate in the battle personally. Can't he just stay in the commander's tent and strategize? This matter is settled. There is no need for further discussion. I think this is very fair." Duan Zhishuan couldn't forget what Li Er said to him in the Sweet Dew Palace this morning. Although the competition between the 2nd Battalion and the 5th Battalion hadn't started yet, the competition between the new and the old drill codes had already been decided by Li Er. Since Li Er was so supportive of Li Zishuan, there was no reason for him to help Qiu Xingong suppress Li Zishuan. "Yes, Grand General. Then, I will take my leave." Seeing Duan Zhishuan's determined face, it was obvious that there was no room for discussion. Although Qiu Xingong was frustrated, he couldn't say anything more and could only leave. After all, he still had a backup plan. Inside the commander's tent, there was only Li Zishuan and Duan Zhishuan left. "Thank you, Grand General." After Qiu Xingong left, Li Zishuan stood up and cupped his fist to thank Duan Zhishuan. Duan Zhishuan laughed and waved his hand. "I am just doing my job impartially. Why does Li Zishuan need to thank me? Actually, you didn't have to give in just now. For this competition, even if you were to participate in the battle personally, it wouldn't be wrong. This is because the overall strength of the 2nd Battalion is much higher than the Wu Battalion." Li Zishuan smiled and said, "The difference in strength between the 2 battalions does exist, but this difference is gradually decreasing. After 9 days, this difference might be negligible. Furthermore, my martial arts skills are much higher than all the soldiers in the battalion. If I were to participate in the battle personally, it would be a bit of a bully. It is enough for me to be able to command from the rear." No matter what, Li Zishuan was a grandmaster late-stage martial arts expert. There were only a few people with such strength in the entire Tang Empire. It could be said that he was now standing at the top of the pyramid in martial arts. Although a Grandmaster Realm expert could not fight against an army of 1,000, in a small-scale battle, a single Grandmaster Realm martial artist was enough to change the outcome of the battle. That was why Qiu Xingong was so concerned about whether Li Zishuan would go up or not. However, this competition was mainly to compare the new and old training methods. If Li Zishuan were to participate in the battle personally, even if he won, it would be difficult to prove anything, because a Grandmaster late-stage martial arts expert would affect the balance of the game too much. Since Li Zishuan is so confident, then I won't say anything more. But Li Zishuan, don't worry. Even if the Wu Battalion loses this competition, you will still be in charge of the training of the Black Armored troops." Duan Zhishuan nodded. Then he smiled mysteriously and whispered to Li Zishuan. Hearing this, Li Zishuan was shocked. He said, "How can that be? We had an agreement that if the Wu Battalion loses this competition, the new training method will be abolished and the training of the Black Armored troops will be handed over to General Qiu." A man's words carried enormous weight. How could he go back on his words? "General, please don't blame me for being unjust. Duan Zhishuan patted Li Zishuan's shoulder and said solemnly, Li Zishuan, this is not my idea. It is His Majesty's idea. Li Zishuan didn't understand. He asked, What do you mean by that? Duan Zhishuan explained, His Majesty approves of your new training regimen. He believes that if we want the newly expanded black armored troops to become a fighting force within 2 months, the previous training regimen will definitely not work. We can only try your new training regimen. Therefore, even if the E Battalion loses this time, the black armored troops will still use the new training regimen. Hearing this, Li Zishuan suddenly understood. At this time, he couldn't help but admire Li Er's foresight and decisiveness. If it was another emperor, he might not be able to see the current situation and problems of the black armored troops at first glance. Even so, a gentleman's promise is worth 1,000 gold. Since we have agreed to the bet, we have to accept the loss. If the Wu Battalion loses the competition 9 days later, I will still abdicate my position. As for His Majesty, I will explain it to him personally. After a moment of silence, Li Zishuan still held his fists and said, but then he changed the topic and said, but I am confident that I can beat the 2nd Battalion. The Wu Battalion will definitely not lose this competition. Hearing Li Zishuan's words, Duan Zhishuan was speechless for a moment. After a while, he sighed and said, All right, since Adjunct Li insists and is so confident, then I will believe you. Li Zishuan smiled and said, Thank you for your trust, Grand General. Then, he suddenly remembered that he wanted to ask Duan Zhishuan for something. He held his fists and said, Grand General, I heard that you have a map of the Nyosho Mountain area. I wonder if you can lend it to me? Map of the Nyosho Mountain? Duan Zhishuan was stunned at first, but he reacted quickly. He laughed and said, Ha, not bad, not bad. The art of war is about the right time, the right place, and the right people. Before the battle, you should first familiarize yourself with the terrain. Adjunct Li is gradually getting better in the art of war. You flatter me. Since the location of the competition is at the Nyosho Mountain, then I will definitely familiarize myself with the terrain of the Nyosho Mountain area. Li Zishuan smiled and held his fists together. Huh. That's how it should be. Qiu Xingong nodded and said, I do have a map of the Nyosho Mountain area. It should be more or less accurate. I will ask my guards to send it to your tent later. Li Zishuan's face lit up. He quickly held his fists together and said, Thank you, Grand General. After embarrassing Qiu Xingong and obtaining the map of the area around Mount Nyosho, Li Zishuan had achieved his goal of this trip. Therefore, he cupped his hands and bid farewell to Duan Zhishuan in satisfaction and returned to the tent area of the Wu Battalion. It was noon. It was the time for the soldiers to eat and rest. He also wanted to return to his tent to rest for a while. Li, so you are here. It's not easy to find you. When Li Zishuan went to the commander's tent to look for Duan Zhishuan, a few soldiers quietly snuck into the Wu Battalion's dining hall. As every soldier in the Black Armored Army was wearing the special vanadium steel plate armor made by the workshop, if one did not look carefully, one would not be able to tell if they were soldiers from the Wu Battalion. One of the soldiers found a man with a scar on his face near the pile of firewood in the north of the dining hall. He then squatted down and greeted him softly. General Bai, what are you doing here? The man with the scar was none other than the first injured soldier Li Zishuan met last night, Ding Dali. Hearing the voice, Ding Dali turned his head and looked over. He was slightly stunned. He swallowed the food in his mouth and said in surprise. This was because the person in front of him was an old acquaintance. To be more precise, it was his old superior. Ding Dali used to be a squad leader in Zhuwuwei, while the man with the surname Bai was called by Shanhai. He was a general in their camp. After being selected to join the Black Armored Army, Ding Dali was assigned to the V camp, whereas the man with the surname Bai was assigned to the B camp. In the Black Armored Army, although there was no explicit rule that stated that soldiers were not allowed to go to other battalions, but under normal circumstances, soldiers would rarely visit other battalions. Hey, didn't I hear that you were injured yesterday? So I came over to take a look. Also, we're in the Black Armored Army now. I'm no longer a general. You could just call me Shanhai. Bai Shanhai patted Ding Dali's shoulder and said with a concerned face, Hee hee, It's just a small injury. Just a small injury. It's just a scratch on my leg. The military doctor said that I will be fine in 2 days. Ding Dolly was flattered by the sudden concern from his old boss. He scratched his head and chuckled. This idiot did not know that one who is unaccountably solicitous is hiding evil intentions. Bai Shanhai rolled his eyes. Seeing that there was no one around, he moved closer to Ding Dolly and whispered, "Dolly, how did you get injured? Can you tell me about it?" Chapter 1776. I accidentally fell off the back of a horse during training yesterday and coincidentally hit a wooden pole. In the Black Armored Army, by the pile of firewood outside the Wu barracks, Ding Dolly thought for a while before answering Bai Shanhai's question. If someone had asked him yesterday afternoon how he got injured, he would definitely have complained about the new training method and Li Zixuan. But last night, Li Zixuan personally patrolled the barracks, consoled the injured soldiers, and even personally checked on his injuries. This made Ding Dolly's impression of Li Zixuan much better. Thus, he didn't tell Bai Shanhai the whole truth. Accidentally fell off the back of a horse. Hearing this, Bai Shanhai's eyes flashed and a hint of disdain appeared at the corner of his mouth. But he quickly covered it up and asked in an incredulous tone, "Dolly, who are you trying to fool? When we were in the Zhuowu barracks, your horsemanship was one of the best in our barracks. You're telling me that you accidentally fell off the back of a horse? How is that possible? What's wrong? Now that we're in the Black Armored Army, you're not even willing to tell me the truth? We used to be in the same barracks. You can't possibly disown me just because we're in a different place, right?" When Ding Dolly heard this, he was so anxious that sweat started to form on his forehead. He put down his bowl and chopsticks and hurriedly waved his hands. No, General Bai, Shanhai, I'm not trying to lie to you. My injury was indeed caused by falling off the back of a horse. Yesterday afternoon, when our barracks were doing charging training, Li Zixuan ordered us to charge forward. If he didn't order us to stop, we couldn't stop. So in the end, my group directly crashed into a wooden pole. But we were all wearing metal armor at that time, so the injury wasn't serious. We'll be fine in 2 days. I accidentally fell off the back of a horse during training yesterday and coincidentally hit a wooden pole. In the Black Armored Army, by the firewood pile outside the kitchen of the Wu barracks, Ding Dolly answered Bai Shanhai's question. If someone had asked him yesterday afternoon how he got injured, he would definitely have complained about the new training method and Li Zixuan. But last night, Li Zixuan personally patrolled the camp, consoled the injured soldiers, and even personally checked on his injuries. This made Ding Dolly have a much better impression of Li Zixuan. As such, he did not tell Bai Shanhai the complete truth. Accidentally fell off the back of a horse. Hearing this, Bai Shanhai's eyes flashed and a trace of disdain appeared at the corner of his mouth. However, he quickly covered it up and asked in an incredulous tone, "Dolly, who are you trying to fool? When we were in the Zhuowu battalion, your horsemanship was one of the best in our battalion. Now you're telling me that you accidentally fell off the back of a horse? How is that possible? What's wrong? Now that we're in the Black Armored Troops, you're not even willing to tell me the truth? We used to be in the same battalion. You can't possibly disown me just because we've changed locations, right?" When Ding Dolly heard this, he was so anxious that sweat started to form on his forehead. He put down his bowl and chopsticks and hurriedly waved his hands, saying, No, General Bai, Shanhai, I'm not trying to lie to you. My injury was indeed caused by falling off the back of a horse. Yesterday afternoon, when our battalion was doing the charging training, Li Zixuan ordered us to charge forward on horseback. If he didn't order us to stop, we couldn't stop. So in the end, my group directly hit a wooden pole. But we were all wearing metal armor at that time, so the injury wasn't serious. We'll be fine in 2 days. Chapter 1777. Every citizen is responsible for the rise and fall of the country. 2 days later, Lantian County's longmen will host a charity event to raise funds for the country. In the Qizhou provincial governor's residence, Wang Renbiao read the latest edition of the Tang Daily and frowned. After a while, He put down the newspaper and muttered to himself, "This charity event must be little Xian's doing. Why are you so sure that the Marquis of Yong is behind this?" But according to the reports, Marquis should be training the soldiers in the black armored troops right now. Hearing this, Lung Yuyao frowned and asked doubtfully. Although Wang Runbiao's voice was soft, it did not escape her ears. After all, she was a martial arts expert close to the Grandmaster realm. "Kiki, although little Xian is in the army, he can send someone else to do this. Look at this, the Yanhuang Chamber of Commerce, a charity event. Who else but little Xian could come up with such an idea?" Wang Rinbiao smiled and pointed at the article in the newspaper. After analyzing it with Lung Yuyao, he stood up with his hands behind his back. "Although I don't know how much money the imperial court is lacking, the fact that His Majesty allowed little Xian to gather the merchants to raise funds for the army shows that the imperial court is somewhat stretched in the war with the Turks. Only by borrowing the strength of the citizens can we raise enough funds for the army. I'm afraid the situation is not optimistic. Every citizen was responsible for the rise and fall of the country." Moreover, Wang Rinbiao was not a commoner, but the eldest son of the Wang family of Taiyuan and the Qizhou provincial governor. Knowing that the imperial court was in trouble, he would naturally be worried. "Then, does young master mean that our Wang family should participate in this charity event?" After a moment of silence, Lung Yuyao asked softly, "Our Wang family, Kiki, can I still represent the Wang family?" Wang Rinbiao suddenly smiled bitterly, a trace of coldness and desolation on his lips. Although he didn't know why Princess Tang and Wang Yu had suddenly agreed to his marriage with Li Jingchu, Wang Rinbiao knew that his marriage with Li Jingchu would definitely anger the elders of the Wang clan. This meant that the resources of the Wang clan would no longer be given to him, and his status as the eldest son of the Wang clan would only exist in name. The elders of the Wang clan would nominate another descendant of the Wang clan to become the future patriarch of the Wang clan. The news of Wang Rinbiao's upcoming marriage had been released for so long, but none of the elders of the Wang family were willing to come to Qizhou for the banquet. This meant that Wang Rinbiao was about to be cold-shouldered and marginalized by the family. "Young master, since the patriarch and the eldest princess have agreed to the marriage between you and Miss Li, I presume the patriarch won't say anything else, right?" Lung Yuyao had been by Wang Rinbiao's side for more than 10 years. How could she not tell what Wang Rinbiao was thinking at this moment? Although she said so, she also knew that this situation was very unlikely. With the nature of the top aristocratic families like the Five Surnames and Seven Hopes, Wang Rinbiao was very likely to be abandoned by the Wang family. How could Wang Rinbiao not understand this? He shook his head and said, Actually, I don't care about the identity of the Wang family's eldest son. Yao, you should understand me. This identity is more of a restriction than a benefit to me. Rather than being restricted by the family, I'm more willing to be an ordinary person, do what I like, and love the person I like. Sometimes I'm quite envious of Xiaoxian. He was able to have the status and wealth he has today, all because of his own hard work, so he can do as he pleases and not be restricted by his family. Although I was born with everything, those things don't belong to me. They come from the family, and the family can take them back at any time. This is not what I want. Hearing this, Lung Yuyao couldn't help but be silent. She lost her parents when she was young and was adopted by the Wang family. She was trained to be a secret guard. Regarding the internal situation of the Wang family, she knew it like the back of her hand. Naturally, she knew that what Wang Rinbiao said was the truth. "Young master, we won't be going to the fundraiser 2 days later." After a moment of silence, Lung Yuyao asked, "No, we have to go." "Of course we have to go." Unexpectedly, Wang Rinbiao shook his head and said firmly, "Since this matter was initiated by Xiaoxian, it's only right for us to help. Although I may not be able to use the Wang family's resources in the future, I should be able to transfer a lot of money from the shops in my hands. Send a message to the shopkeeper of the Craftsman Pavilion and ask him to attend the fundraiser in my place 2 days later and donate 30,000 strings of cash." Wang Rinbiao had previously invested in the Yanhuang Chamber of Commerce and could be considered one of the earliest members of the Yanhuang Chamber of Commerce. The shops under him had received preferential treatment from the Yin Huang Chamber of Commerce in terms of resources and had earned quite a bit of money in the past year. 30,000 strings of cash. Young master wants to donate so much? Lung Yuyao wasn't surprised that Wang Renbiao wanted to help Lisa Xuan. She was surprised that Wang Renbiao wanted to donate so much money at once. 30,000 strings of cash might be a drop in the ocean to the Wang family. But to Wang Renbiao, who was about to be abandoned by the Wang family, this 30,000 strings of cash could very well affect his livelihood for the rest of his life. Xiao Xian is my brother. Now that the court is in trouble and His Majesty has given Xiao Xian an order, although I don't know how much military fund will be collected for Xiao Xian to complete his mission as his brother, I should do my best to help him. Moreover, Xiao Xian was the one who brought me and Jingxu together. If not for him, Jingxu and I would have become Jiao Zhongxing and Lu Lanji, right? A mere 30,000 strings of cash isn't enough to repay Xiao Xian's kindness to me. Wang Renbiao's gaze was deep as he spoke faintly. Of course, he knew that he might be abandoned by the Wang family. Moreover, after being abandoned by the Wang family, money would become a very important thing to him. But so what? Was he supposed to stand by and watch when his brother was in trouble? That was impossible. Yes, young master, Yu Yao will send a message to the shopkeeper of the Craftsman Pavilion and ask him to attend the fundraiser in 2 days. Lung Yu Yao bowed. Go Yao. Wang Renbiao nodded, and the study instantly quieted down. Chapter 1778. Yes, there's a mountain here, but it's not high or steep. You can climb it on horseback. How high is not high? 100 feet or 100 feet? How would I remember that? Didn't you say that you're good at memorizing directions? That you can remember everything you've been there once? I did remember that, but I've forgotten it now. Think about it carefully. If you can't remember, you can go and train. I'll ask Zhiping to double your training today. Don't. Xiao Xian, wait, I think I remember. That mountain is about 500 feet tall and has a radius of half a mile. There are many pine trees on the mountain. Yes. What about here? The map shows that there's a mountain here too. Do you remember how high it is? In the afternoon, in Li Zishuan's tent, he and Cheng Chumo were working on a military sand table of Nyosho Mountain. Cheng Chumo suddenly realized that he had made a wrong decision. Assisting Li Zishuan in making the sand table was no easier than training on the drill ground. Li Zishuan had asked too many questions. He had asked about the height of the mountain, the size of the area, the density of the forest, and the number of mountain paths around the mountain. He used to go hunting on Nyosho Mountain with a bunch of rich kids in Chang'an. However, he was there for fun and not to survey the terrain. How would he remember all these details? But it was too late for regrets now. If he wanted to get off the pirate ship now, his training today would be doubled. Wouldn't that kill him? Thus, Cheng Chumo felt like his head was about to explode for the entire afternoon. It was too much for him to handle. There's a mountain here, but it's not high or steep. You can go up on horseback. How high is not high? 100 feet or 100 feet? How would I remember that? Didn't you say that you're good at memorizing directions? That you can remember all the places you've been to once? I remembered that, but I've forgotten it now. Why don't you King think about it again? If you can't remember, then go practice. I'll ask Zhiping to double your training today. And no. Little Xian, wait a moment. I seem to remember something. That mountain is about 500 zhang tall and has a radius of half a li. There are many pine trees on the mountain. Yes. What about here? The map shows that there is also a peak here. Do you still remember how high it is? In the afternoon, in Li Zishuan's tent of the Black Armored Army, he and Cheng Chumo were rushing to make a military sand table of Mount Nyosho, according to the map. Cheng Chumo suddenly realized that he had made a wrong decision. Assisting Li Zishuan in making the sand table in the tent was no easier than practicing on the drill ground. This was because Li Zishuan had asked too many questions in detail. He had asked about the height of the mountain, how wide it was, how dense the forest was, and how many mountain paths there were around the mountain. He used to go hunting on Mount Yosho with a bunch of second-generation rich kids in Chang'an. However, he was there for fun and not to survey the terrain. How could he remember all these details? But it was too late for regrets. If he wanted to get off the pirate ship now, his training today would be doubled. Wouldn't that be asking for his life? Thus, Chung Chumo felt like his head was about to explode for the entire afternoon. It was too much for his brain. Chapter 1779. What? He wants to donate 10,000 strings of cash to the imperial court? In the back hall of the Lantian County Yamen, everyone exclaimed after hearing County Magistrate He's words. If it was in the past, all the taxes collected by the Lantian County Yamen had to be handed over to the imperial court. No one dared to withhold them, unless they were tired of living. However, ever since Li Er bestowed the entire Lantian County to Li Zishuan as a fief, Li Zishuan became the true king of Lantian County. The taxes collected by the entire Lantian County did not need to be handed over to the imperial court. Instead, they belonged to Li Zishuan's private property. However, ever since Li Zishuan returned to Chang, and from Mount Longhu, his restaurant, Chichu Pavilion, Chichu Culture, and various other businesses flourished. In just over a year, he had earned such a huge fortune. Naturally, he did not care about the pitiful amount of taxes collected by a small Lantian county. Last year, Li Zishuan used his own money to build the Tang Alliance Medical Center in Lantian County. After that, he officially handed over the rights to use the taxes collected by Lantian County to County Magistrate He, the Lantian County Yamen. He only had one request for County Magistrate He, which was to take from the people and use it for the people. The taxes collected by the Lantian County Yamen every year had to be used to improve the livelihood of the people. For example, building roads, paving bridges, building schools, and so on. A few months ago, Lantian County underwent a major renovation. The roads in the city were all replaced with wide and flat cement roads. All these projects used the County Yamen's money. Even if the County Yamen could not fork out so much money at once, it was fine. They could borrow from Yanhuang Bank first and return the money when the taxes were collected next month. This was a little like borrowing money in modern society. Therefore, when they heard that County Magistrate he wanted to donate 10,000 strings of cash from the County Yamen's treasury, everyone present could not help but feel a little pained. This was because the money belonged to the County Yamen. Once it was donated, the County Yamen's treasury would shrink by a lot. If the County Yamen were to carry out any more projects to improve the livelihood of the people, it was very likely that they would face a financial crisis. County Magistrate, isn't 10,000 strings of cash a little too much? County Magistrate Meng swallowed his saliva and asked tentatively. Too much. Of course it was a lot. In the past, these county officials would never be able to come into contact with 10,000 strings of cash. This was because in the entire Great Tang, there was not a single county that could collect more than 10,000 strings of cash every year. Yes, County Magistrate. According to Marquis's plan, the county still had to expand the city and lay out electric wires so that the people in the city could use electric lights. Both of these projects required a lot of money. If we donate 10,000 strings of coins, we won't be able to push forward the next two projects. After a moment of hesitation, Registrar Wang cupped his hands and said, What? You want to donate 10,000 strings of cash to the imperial court? In the back hall of the Lantian County Yamen, everyone couldn't help but exclaim after hearing County Magistrate He's words. If it was in the past, all the taxes collected by the Lantian County Yamen every year had to be handed over to the imperial court. No one dared to withhold them unless they were tired of living. However, ever since Li Zishuan bestowed the entire Lantian County to Li Zishuan as a fief, Li Zishuan became the true king of Lantian County. The taxes collected by the entire Lantian County did not have to be handed over to the imperial court. Instead, they belonged to Li Zishuan's private property. However, ever since Li Zishuan returned to Chang, and from Mount Longhu, his restaurant, Chichu Pavilion, Chichu Culture, and various other businesses were doing well. In just over a year, he had earned a huge fortune. Naturally, he didn't care about the pitiful amount of taxes collected by a small Lantian county. Last year, Li Zishuan used his own money to build the Tang Alliance Medical Center in Lantian County. After that, he officially handed over the rights to use the taxes collected by Lantian County to County Magistrate He, the Lantian County Yamen. He only had one request for County Magistrate He, which was to take from the people and use it for the people. The taxes collected by the Lantian County Yamen every year had to be used to improve the livelihood of the people. For example, building roads and bridges, building schools, and so on. A few months ago, Lantian County underwent a major renovation. The roads in the city were all replaced with wide and flat cement roads. All these projects used the county Yamen's money. Even if the county Yamen couldn't take out so much money at once, it didn't matter. They could borrow from the Yinhuang Bank first. When the next month's taxes were collected, they could return the money. This was a little like borrowing money in modern society. Therefore, when they heard that county magistrate he wanted to donate 10,000 strings of cash from the county Yamen's treasury, they couldn't help but feel a little pained. This was because the money belonged to the county Yamen. Once it was donated, the county Yamen's treasury would shrink by a lot. If the county Yamen were to carry out any projects to improve the livelihood of the people, it was very likely that they would be faced with a shortage of money. County Magistrate, isn't 10,000 strings of cash a little too much? County Magistrate Meng swallowed his saliva and asked tentatively, Too much? Of course it was too much. If it was in the past, these county Yamen officials would never be able to come into contact with 10,000 strings of cash. This was because in the entire Tang Empire, there wasn't a single county that could collect more than 10,000 strings of cash every year. That's right, county magistrate. According to Marquis's plan, the county will have to expand the city and lay out electricity lines so that the people in the city can use electric lights. These two projects will require a lot of money. If we donate 10,000 strings of cash, we won't be able to carry out these two projects. Registrar Wang hesitated for a moment, then clasped his hands and said, Chapter 1780. Bang, bang, bang. In the Black Armored Army's camp, outside the kitchen of the Wu barracks, a soldier was sweating profusely under the setting sun. As he swung his axe again and again, round logs were chopped into halves. The series of actions could be said to be done in one go, clean and neat. It was pleasing to the eye. However, the soldier's words were not so pleasing to the eye. Hey, I am the son of a duke. How can I be reduced to chopping firewood in the army? This is so unfair. Xiao Xian, you're torturing me on purpose. Tonight, when you fall asleep, I'll stuff Bao Lin's footwear at your bedside. Hey, F***CK. How much firewood does the kitchen burn in a day? Is there a need to chop so much? Could it be that the kid just now was pranking me too? The person chopping the firewood was Cheng Chumo. After all, this fellow knew martial arts. Chopping firewood was a piece of cake for him. His efficiency was 3 to 4 times faster than the average person. Although his movements were smooth and fluid, Cheng Chumo was cursing as he chopped the firewood. He even threatened to prank Li Zishuan at night. But this fellow was too ignorant. Ever since he entered the army camp, when was he not the first to fall asleep? If he really wanted to prank someone, it would be Li Zishuan pranking him, not Li Zishuan. Phew, I'm finally done chopping. People who knew martial arts were different. Ordinary people would need more than 2 hours to chop all the firewood. But Cheng Chumo only used half an hour to chop all the firewood. After he finished chopping, this guy began to organize the pile of firewood in front of him, piling them up into piles. There should still be more than an hour before the training ends, right? The food in the kitchen is not ready yet. Where should I go? After everything was done, Cheng Chumo couldn't help but feel troubled. At this moment, the soldiers on the training ground were still training. If he were to return to his tent, Li Zishuan might chase him to the training ground to train with the other soldiers. However, if he were to stay in the kitchen, he would have nothing to do, because the food was not ready yet. He couldn't eat, even if he wanted to. Could it be that he, the son of a duke, had to cook for others? Chung Chumo quickly shook his head and threw this terrifying thought out of his mind. Where was the hottest place in the summer? It must be the kitchen. In the kitchen of the Wu Battalion, there were many stoves that were burning firewood at the same time. It was simply not a place for humans. He couldn't go back to his tent. He couldn't stay in the kitchen. He didn't want to go to the training ground. Even if he wandered around the barracks, he would be punished if he was caught. Why don't I hide in the pile of firewood and rest for a while? Looking at the neat piles of firewood under the shed, Chung Chumo suddenly had an idea, and an idea came to his mind. Since he couldn't go anywhere, he might as well hide here and slack off for a while. The cooks in the kitchen still didn't know that he had finished chopping the firewood so quickly. By the time they found out, it would be almost time for dinner. On the other hand, Li Zishuan must still think that he was helping to cook in the kitchen. Naturally, he wouldn't find out that he was slacking off. This was a good plan that could kill two birds with one stone. Chung Chumo couldn't help but praise himself for his cleverness. Then, he walked to the pile of firewood and stood against the wall. Next, he placed a pile of firewood in front of him and beside him. Then he squatted down and directly leaned against the wall to enjoy the shade. This pile of firewood was next to the kitchen. There was a shed on top of it. It was ventilated from 3 sides. At this moment, there was a slight southeast wind blowing. Chung Chumo didn't feel hot staying inside. Anyway, it was much cooler than the kitchen. If someone passed by here, they would only see the pile of firewood and wouldn't see a lazy guy slacking off in the pile of firewood. Sigh. Finally, I could take a break. Chung Chumo leaned against the wall comfortably, feeling the slight breeze from the gaps of the pile of firewood. His nerves relaxed, and for a moment, he actually felt a little sleepy. This afternoon, helping Li Zishuan to make the sandbox had consumed too many of his brain cells. Now that he was relaxed, his upper and lower eyelids began to fight. Then he actually fell asleep in the pile of firewood. Chapter 1781. After dinner, Li Zishuan returned to his tent with Yuchi Baolin. Although Sun Jiping also wanted to go over and take a look at the sand table, he still had some military matters to attend to, so he could only wait until nighttime. As for Chung Chumo's whereabouts, although Li Zishuan was worried, he wasn't too worried. Just as he said earlier, the Black Armored Army's gate was sealed. Without Duan Zhishuan's permission, no one could leave the camp. Although Chung Chumo was the son of a duke, military orders came first in the army. Without Duan Zhishuan's permission, he wouldn't be able to leave the gate. Therefore, Li Zishuan guessed that Chung Chumo was most likely hiding somewhere and sneaking around. When nighttime came, this fellow would definitely return to his tent to sleep. It wouldn't be too late to deal with him then. Li Zishuan and Sun Jiping went to the kitchen early, so they ate quickly. After they left, there were still many soldiers who had just gotten their food. Ding Dali was one of them. Although this person was usually carefree and straightforward, he liked to eat quietly and didn't like to talk to others at this time. Therefore, he usually ate alone by the firewood on the east side of the kitchen. Tonight was no exception. Hey, Dali, eat. Just as Ding Dali was half full, a rough voice suddenly sounded in his ears. Ding Dali turned his head and saw that it was by Shanhai who had come to deliver medicine to him in the afternoon. Shanhai, you're here? Take a seat. Take a seat. Have you eaten? Ding Dali hurriedly pointed to a wooden stool beside him and greeted by Shanhai warmly. It was completely different from the coldness in the afternoon. Now, Ding Dali was extremely warm towards Bai Shanhai. The difference in his attitude before was like heaven and earth. The reason was because of what Bai Shanhai had said to Ding Dali in the afternoon, which made Ding Dali feel guilty. It was because of this guilt that Ding Dali let down his guard against Bai Shanhai and even became somewhat warm towards him. I've already eaten. Bai Shanhai waved his hand and sat down beside Ding Dali. In fact, Bai Shanhai was pleasantly surprised by Ding Dali's enthusiasm. This proved that the act he put on at noon was not in vain. To him, things were developing in a good direction. After sitting down, Bai Shanhai pretended to be concerned. He looked at Ding Dali and asked, Dali, have you applied the ointment I gave you this afternoon? Is her leg better now? It's almost healed. It wasn't a serious injury in the first place, and the medicine you gave me was very special. After applying it, it felt cool and refreshing. When I was training in the afternoon, I felt the pain in my leg lessen a lot. I think it should be completely healed by tomorrow. Ding Dali quickly replied. Then he hesitated for a moment and said, Well, Shanghai, I was a little harsh with my words at noon. Don't take it to heart. I don't know what's good for me. I apologize to you. Just treat me as a fart and let me go, okay? After saying that, he couldn't help but look at Bai Shanghai anxiously. Hearing this, Bai Shanghai patted Ding Dali's shoulder and laughed loudly. Huh, you and I are brothers, and we used to be comrades. I won't take such small things to heart. But Dali, as your brother, there's something I don't know if I should say. Towards the end, Bai Shanghai seemed to want to say something, but stopped. When Ding Dali heard that Bai Shanghai wasn't angry about what happened at noon, he couldn't help but feel a little happy. But after hearing the last sentence, he immediately patted his chest and said seriously, Shanghai, what are you saying? I didn't know before, but now I know. You really treat me as a brother. If you have something to say, just say it. The two of them were talking happily, and it was really a scene of brotherly affection. But neither of them noticed that in the pile of firewood behind them, there was a lazy guy who had just woken up from his sleep. How did I fall asleep? Why is it so noisy outside? Could it be that the army's training has ended? Chung Chumo, who had been lazing around in the pile of firewood and sleeping for more than an hour, suddenly heard a burst of noise. He couldn't help but rub his sleepy eyes, and his consciousness gradually became clear. Just as he was about to stand up, he heard Bai Shanghai say in a low voice from outside, Don't worry. Dali, I heard that this Li Kanjun seems to treat people peacefully and has the style of a gentleman. But in private, he is vicious and cruel and likes to deliberately torture people. Some of the servants in his residence have been tortured to the point where they can't even die. The reason why his fierce reputation hasn't spread outside is because this person is extremely good at disguising himself. He is one person in front of people and another person in private. So when you guys hit the wooden stakes and got injured yesterday, I feel that it wasn't because Li Kanjun wanted to train you to obey orders, but because he likes to torture people. Think about it. At that time, he was able to torture you for fun, and he even had such a dignified excuse. How could he let go of such a good opportunity? Hearing this, no matter how stupid Chung Chumo was, he felt that something was wrong. He, who had wanted to stand up, quickly sat back down. What? How is that possible? When Ding Dali heard Bai Shanghai's words, his first reaction was disbelief. He stared and said, Before Li Kanjun entered the military camp, he might have led the Sky Pheasant Brigade to exterminate the locusts in dozens of counties in the north. He solved the locust plague of the local people and saved countless people. How could he be the vicious and cruel person you're talking about? Why does this voice sound so familiar? Chung Chumo, who was hiding in the pile of firewood and eavesdropping, couldn't help but feel that Ding Dali's voice was familiar. After seriously recalling in his mind for a moment, Chung Chumo finally remembered the owner of this voice. Isn't this Ding Dali, who I met last night when I was patrolling with Xiao Xian? Why is he here? No. Who's he talking to? It doesn't sound like he's from our camp. Last night, Chung Chumo had been patrolling the camp with Li Zixuan. Although this fellow felt bored halfway through and slipped back to sleep, the camp that Ding Dali was in was the first one they patrolled yesterday. At that time, Chung Chumo was present, so he could quickly recognize Ding Dali's voice. However, he had never heard this other voice before. But from the words that person said, it was obvious that he was deliberately trying to sow discord. This made Chung Chumo feel a sense of vigilance. He planned to hide in the pile of firewood and eavesdrop for a while, waiting to see what would happen next. Chung Chumo was a simple and honest person, but he was not stupid. He still understood the principle of catching an adulterer in bed and catching a thief with the stolen goods. Outside the pile of firewood, Bai Shanghai's eyes flashed, and he said in a low voice, I said, that's just his appearance. Kanjun Li is the best at one thing on the surface and another behind the scenes. Besides, didn't he do all that for the sake of being promoted? Didn't you see that after he returned from the north, he received a lot of rewards from His Majesty? That's true. After the Sky Rooster Brigade returned from the north, Li Zixuan was conferred the title of governor of Qingzhou. The whole of Qingzhou became his fief. So Ding Dali thought for a while and nodded subconsciously. But then he realized that something was wrong and quickly said, "That's not right. Last night, I heard from Kanjun Li that our battalion will have a competition with your 2nd Battalion in 9 days. So during this period of time, he will arrange a heavier training mission for us. And some of us will inevitably get injured. But this is all because Kanjun Li wants us to become stronger so that we can defeat you in the competition in 9 days. Hearing this, Bai Shanhai's expression froze. But after a while, he reacted. He patted Ding Dali's shoulder and said, Dali, you are really too young. Do you know how the competition in 9 days came about? Kanjun Li saw that General Qiu had rich experience and outstanding ability. So he wanted to chase General Qiu out of the Black Armored Army and force General Qiu to agree to the competition. As long as your Wu Battalion wins this competition, General Qiu will leave the Black Armored Army. He said that he is training you like this for your own good. But in reality, he is training you like this for himself. He wants to get rid of the dissidents and dominate the Black Armored Army. That's why he wants you to train so hard, but doesn't care if you live or die. As long as you can win the competition, even if you get injured, he won't care. F***CK. Who the hell is this bastard? How dare he slander Xiao Xian like this? Hearing this, Cheng Chimo couldn't help but be furious. More than an hour ago, although he had secretly made up stories about Li Zixuan, and even wanted to take advantage of Li Zixuan's sleep and stuff Yuchi Baolin's smelly socks to Li Zixuan's bed, he didn't allow others to badmouth Li Zixuan. Because no matter what, Li Zixuan was the most important brother in his life to Cheng Chimo. What? There's such a thing? Outside the pile of firewood, Ding Dali said in shock. I only know that there will be a competition with your 2nd Battalion in 9 days, but I didn't know that this competition was initiated by General Li. But our battalion can't even defeat your battalion. Why would General Li do this? Oof. It's because you are no match for us. That's why General Li did this. Hearing this, Bai Shanhai laughed coldly and said, Think about it. If the Wu Battalion is stronger than the 2nd Battalion, then how can General Li prove that his ability is better than General Qiu's? He wants to use this competition to build his reputation in the Black Armored Army and force General Qiu to leave the Black Armored Army. And you guys are just stepping stones on Li Zixuan's path to success. He only sees you guys as tools and doesn't care if you live or die. That's why he came up with such a cruel training method, making you guys train so hard, and even injuring both men and horses. What? It's actually like this? Ding Dali's face turned pale when he heard this. What Bai Shanhai said was completely different from the image he had of Li Zixuan in his mind, and it was hard for him to accept it. Dali, seeing Ding Dali's pale face and dazed eyes, the corners of Bai Shanhai's mouth curled up into an imperceptible smile. He stepped forward and patted Ding Dali's shoulder, deciding to follow up on his victory. With a deep expression, he said, The 2nd Battalion can lose this competition because we can't bear to see you guys being tortured by General Li like this. We are all in the Black Armored Army, and that means we are fellow soldiers, brothers. Now you guys have only suffered some light injuries, but who knows if you will lose your lives in the future. You guys didn't die on the battlefield, but on the drill ground. To the Black Armored Army, this is a great humiliation. Ding Dali rubbed his forehead with a pained expression. He waved his hand and said, Shanhai, don't say any more. I'm just a small soldier in the Wu Battalion. Even if I know all this, I can't do anything. It's better for me to continue being muddle-headed. Bai Shanhai saw that the time was ripe, and his eyes flashed with joy. He hurriedly said, Dali, who said you can't do anything? Brother, let me tell you the truth. The lieutenant of our battalion has long been sick of General Li's atrocities. The medicine I gave you this afternoon was given to us by our lieutenant. Our lieutenant will definitely have a way to take down Li Zixuan and stop him from harming you guys. Let's do it this way. Tonight at midnight, you call the other wounded brothers in your camp over here. First, I'll give them some medicine. Second, I'll invite our captain over. He'll tell you how to resist adjunct Li's atrocities next. How about it? But what if we are discovered? Ding Dali's eyes flashed with a hint of hesitation, but he was still hesitant. Seeing this, Bai Shanhai patted him on the shoulder and said, Dali, don't worry. Our black armored army is not something that Li Zishuan can cover with one hand. If anything happens, our lieutenant will take care of it for you. At the very least, there is still General Chiu. General Chiu is a righteous person. When the time comes, he will definitely uphold justice for us. You have to know that you are not only saving yourself, but also saving your brothers in the battalion. Can you bear to see them being abused by Li Zishuan? With Li Zishuan's atrocious personality, they will be crippled sooner or later. Bai Shanhai's last sentence had struck a chord in Ding Dali's heart. He had no other good points, but he was a righteous person. Hearing this, the originally hesitant Ding Dali suddenly became determined. He looked at Bai Shanhai and nodded heavily. Okay, Brother Shanhai, I will listen to you. Tonight at midnight, I will bring my brothers here to meet your lieutenant. Let's see what he can do. Good, Dali. You are still as righteous as before. I, Bai Shanhai, did not misjudge you. Hearing this, Bai Shanhai could not help but become excited. He heavily punched Ding Dali's chest and said excitedly, then it settled. I will go back to the battalion now and inform our lieutenant. Tonight at midnight, I will not leave until I see you. All right. Li Zishuan is very good at disguising himself. Most of the soldiers in the battalion have been deceived by his hypocrisy. You must be careful when you do things. Do not make a fuss about it to avoid being obstructed. At the end, Bai Shanhai reminded him worriedly. Brother Shanhai, I know. Don't worry. Ding Dali nodded. Only then did Bai Shanhai relax and leave. Chapter 1782. Damn you, Ding Dali. Last night, Xiao Xian even personally treated your injuries. Today you're going to change sides just because someone instigated you? What a King ingrate. After Ding Dali and Bai Shanhai left, Cheng Chimo walked out from the pile of firewood. Looking at the two's departing figures, he waved his fist and said hatefully, No, I have to tell Xiao Xian about this. Cheng Chimo muttered to himself in a low voice. But as soon as he took a step forward, he retracted his foot. He rubbed his growling stomach and sighed. Alas, filling my stomach is more important. If I miss this meal, I can only wait until tomorrow morning to eat. I can still tell Xiao Xian after I eat. Sure enough, eating was the most important thing in the world. To Cheng Chimo, nothing in this world was more important than filling his stomach. However, he knew that Ding Dali and Bai Shanhai wouldn't be able to do anything in such a short time. So he was in the mood to eat first. In the tent, Li Zishuan waited for a long time, but Cheng Chimo still hadn't returned. He, who wasn't worried at first, gradually became anxious. Cheng Chimo and Yuchi Baolin had entered the army camp to help him. If either of them were to meet with mishap in the Black Armored Army, then Li Zishuan would have let down Cheng Yaojin and Yuchi Jingda. Moreover, he would feel guilty for the rest of his life. Just as Li Zishuan was about to personally go out to look for Cheng Chimo, a series of footsteps finally came from outside the tent, followed by Cheng Chimo's shouts. Xiao Xian, something has happened. The curtain was lifted and Cheng Chimo walked in quickly. Li Zishuan took a step forward and blocked him. His voice was cold as he said, Chimo, where did you go during dinner? Seeing that Li Zishuan had the intention of denouncing him, Cheng Chimo couldn't help but shrink his neck. Although he said that he wanted to prank Li Zishuan behind his back, when they met face to face, this guy immediately cowered. Because he really couldn't beat him. Cough, cough. Xiao Xian, let's not talk about this first. I found something very important. Hurry up and listen to me. Cheng Chimo quickly changed the topic and said, No matter what it is, you have to answer the question I just asked. Li Zishuan, who was well aware of Cheng Chimo's nature, was not moved in the slightest. With a cold expression, he looked at Cheng Chimo and said indifferently, Xiao Xian, I'm not joking with you this time. I really found something very important. Someone is trying to sow discord among our soldiers. I think it's someone from the 2nd Battalion. Just now, outside the kitchen, That person went to look for Ding Dolly. I heard everything they said. That person seems to be called Shanghai or something. In order to prove his innocence, Ching Chumo hurriedly told Li Zixuan everything he saw and heard outside the kitchen. Seeing that Ching Chumo spoke in a methodical manner and didn't seem to be lying, Li Zixuan's expression immediately became serious. Huh, Yamacho, didn't we go see this son Dolly last night? Yamacho, you even personally treated his injuries. How could he believe that person's malicious words about you, Yamacho? After Ching Chumo finished speaking, before Li Zixuan could say anything, Yuchi Bao Lin couldn't help but speak up angrily. Ding Dolly and I didn't have a close relationship before this. It's impossible for him to believe me just based on what I said last night. And from what Chumo said, this person called Shanghai seems to be familiar with Ding Dolly. Therefore, it's understandable that Ding Dolly would turn against him. Li Zixuan patted Bao Lin's shoulder to calm him down. Then he clasped his hands behind his back and said, "The truly despicable person is that person called Shanghai." He said that he came from the 2nd Battalion, and this matter was ordered by 2nd Battalion Lieutenant Sun Tao. This way it all makes sense. HM? How does it make sense? Xiao Xian, don't just say half of it. Ching Chumo was listening attentively when Li Zixuan suddenly stopped talking. This made him very anxious, so he couldn't help but ask. Li Zixuan cast a sidelong glance at the idiot and said, "Why don't you tell me where you went just now? How did you hear the conversation between Sun Tao and that person? And how did you not get discovered by them?" This if I tell you, Xiao Xian, can you not be angry? Ching Chumo scratched his head, troubled. You tell me first. Li Zixuan said calmly with a straight face. Okay. I'll talk. Although Li Zixuan's face was expressionless, Ching Chumo, who knew Li Zixuan's character well, knew what Li Zixuan's expression meant. It meant that he would be lenient if he confessed, and severe if he resisted. Thus, he lowered his head and honestly confessed, "You're right. Earlier, you asked me to help in the kitchen, so I went. In the end, the kitchen staff asked me to help them chop firewood. I had a lot of strength, so I finished chopping very quickly. But after I finished chopping, I didn't know where to go, so I rested in the firewood pile for a while. Who knew that I would accidentally fall asleep? When I woke up, I heard Ding Dolly and that Mountain Sea guy plotting something outside the firewood pile. I saw that they didn't have me, so I quietly eavesdropped. After that, you know everything. You always think about slacking off every day. Look at how steady Bao Lin is in his training all day." Li Zixuan was very smart. How could he not guess why Chang Chumo didn't return to the tent after chopping the firewood? He glared at him and said, Chang Chumo knew that he was in the wrong. He shrunk his neck and whispered, "If I didn't slack off, how could I have heard their conspiracy?" Li Zixuan was so angry that he laughed. He pointed at Ching Chumo and said, "So not only did you not do anything wrong, but you also did something good? Should I ask the general to reward you?" Ching Chumo laughed awkwardly. He quickly waved his hand and said, "Ha, that's not necessary. I don't need any reward." "Oh, right. Xiao Xian, you haven't finished what you said just now. You can continue." Encountering such a shameless guy, Li Zixuan didn't know what to do. He secretly rolled his eyes and said, "It's obvious that someone is trying to instigate the soldiers of the Wu Battalion who got injured during the training. They're trying to sow discord between me and the soldiers. They're trying to disturb the morale of the soldiers. Once the morale of the soldiers is disturbed, we don't even need to compete with the 2nd Battalion 9 days later. We can just admit defeat." Hearing that, Cheng Chumo stared at him and said with righteous indignation, "What? In that case, this matter must have been secretly arranged by that bastard Sun Tao. That son of a bitch is really a sinister person. He can't beat the Wu Battalion head-on, so he decided to stab us in the back. Pooh! When I meet him one day, I'll definitely beat him to death." "Shut up." Li Zixuan quickly interrupted Cheng Chumo and said, "Private fights are strictly prohibited in the military. Even if Sun Tao is the mastermind behind this, he should be punished according to military law. You better be honest and don't get yourself into trouble. Besides, we don't have any evidence to prove that this is Sun Tao's doing. So Chumo, don't act rashly." "Oh, what? What do you mean we don't have any evidence to prove that this is Sun Tao's doing? This is what the guy named Shanghai said himself. Isn't the evidence obvious? Cheng Chumo responded subconsciously, but he immediately refuted. Li Zixuan sighed and explained, as the saying goes, to catch a thief, you need the stolen goods. These are only your side of the story. It's not enough to be used as evidence. And even if we take this guy down, he will deny it. In this way, not only will we not be able to find out the real culprit, we will also alert the enemy and make the mastermind more vigilant. In this way, we won't be able to guard against him in the future. Then what should we do? We can't just watch them try to drive a wedge between our brothers, right? Cheng Chumo scratched his head out of habit when he was unable to make a decision. Li Zixuan shook his head and said, since we know about their conspiracy, there is no reason for us to sit back and do nothing. It's just that we don't have enough evidence, so we can only beat them at their own game. Chumo Baolin, come here. Li Zixuan waved to Cheng Chumo and Yuchi Baolin. The two hurriedly moved their heads over. Li Zixuan was about to speak when he smelled a strange smell. He quickly retreated and waved his hand. Cheng Chumo, how long has it been since you last bathed? Master, why did you come back today? At 7:30, the sky was not completely dark yet. Cheng Yaojin was dressed in martial attire and rode back to Duke Lu's residence. Madame Cheng heard the commotion and came out from the backyard. When she saw Cheng Yaojin, she hurriedly went up and greeted him. Now that the 12 guards of the capital had all entered the closed training phase, the commanding general of the army usually stayed in the barracks day and night to train the soldiers. However, in comparison, the black armor troops had just been expanded and their training was heavier. The management of the generals and soldiers in the army was stricter. The other armies were not as strict as the black armor troops. If the commanding general had something to do, he could still leave the barracks. But even so, Cheng Yaojin had not returned home to sleep for several nights. So when Madame Cheng saw Cheng Yaojin, she was a little surprised. Hey, I came back for some matters. Cheng Yaojin dismounted and handed the reins to the guards in the residence as he replied to Madame Cheng. Master, have you eaten yet? Madame Cheng asked. Not yet. Just ask the kitchen to prepare 2 dishes and a pot of good wine. After a busy day, this old man is starving, Cheng Yaojin said loudly. With that, he walked towards the main hall in the front yard. Half an hour later, in the main hall of the Cheng residence, Cheng Yaojin was drinking wine and eating meat with relish. He was eating happily. Madame Cheng, who had already eaten dinner, sat at the side and watched Cheng Yaojin eat heartily. She could not help but think that her husband came back tonight because he had enough of the coarse grain in the army and came back to improve his diet. Oh, madam, have you seen the Tang daily today? Just as Madame Cheng was letting her imagination run wild, Cheng Yaojin finally spoke. He chewed on his food and spoke with a lisp. I've seen it. Why are you asking this, master? Madame Cheng, who had regained her senses, asked curiously. 2 days later, Lantian County will be holding that fundraising event. At that time, you can ask the shopkeeper of one of our shops to take 5,000 strings of money and donate it to Lantian County. Cheng Yaojin raised his head and said to Madame Cheng. Then, he happily drank another small cup of wine. He was very satisfied. Things were different now. Ever since Duke Lu's mansion hitched a ride on Li Zixuan's Get Rich Express last year, the mansion's monthly income was at least a few thousand strings of coins. Over the past year, not only were many old pavilions rebuilt, even the tables and chairs in the mansion were replaced with new ones. The Cheng family was no longer the stingy Cheng family of the past. Although 5,000 strings of money was not a small amount, with the Cheng family's current financial situation, it was still completely possible for them to take it out. What? Master, you want to send someone to the fundraising event to donate 5,000 strings of money? No, I don't agree. Madame Cheng almost flipped the table when she heard this. She stood up and looked at Cheng Yaojin as if he was crazy. Our family's money doesn't grow on trees. It's not easy to save some money. With that meager salary of yours, our family would have long been starving. If it wasn't for Xiao Xian letting us invest in the winery last year, Chonyo, Chu Liang, and I would still be living a hard life with you. Now that you want to donate 5,000 strings of money, I think you've been living a good life and have lost your sense of measure. Moreover, that fundraising event is a matter between merchants. What does it have to do with our residents? It must be said that in ancient times, women were the best at managing a household. Before Li Zixuan appeared, the only source of income for the Cheng residents was Cheng Yaojin's salary and the rent paid by the commoners in the fief. Cheng Yaojin was an honest and upright person and was not the type to be a corrupt official. Thus, the Cheng residents could only rely on this bit of income to survive. It was barely enough to survive. After Li Zixuan appeared, because of Cheng Chumo, the Cheng residents finally became rich. However, Madame Cheng, who was used to living a hard life, still had a strong sense of worry. When she heard that Cheng Yaojin was going to waste the residents' money, how could she sit still? It would be strange if she didn't explode. Cough, cough. Madam, don't be anxious. Listen to this old man slowly tell you. Seeing this, Cheng Yaojin was a little scared. On the surface, he was in charge of the Duke's residence. However, that was only because his wife gave him face in front of outsiders. Secretly, he still respected his wife by 30%. Oh no, 70%. When this tigress showed her power, it would be strange if he didn't cower. Oomph. Then tell me. Madame Cheng glared and said, all of you can leave first. Cheng Yaojin put down his bowl and chopsticks and waved to the servants in the room. Everyone obeyed the order, and only the husband and wife were left in the main hall. Cheng Yaojin then said, Madam, this fundraising event was actually organized by Xiao Xian. Moreover, it was His Majesty who asked him to do it. Do you remember that I went to second Brother Qin's house to drink wine a few days ago? At that time, Xiao Xian and His Majesty were also there. Chapter 1783. Before Li Zixuan went to the Black Armored Army, he had visited Qin Xiong at Chang, in city's Qin Manor. At that time, Cheng Yaojin was also at Qin Manor. The three of them drank to their heart's content at noon, but Li Er suddenly arrived. That afternoon, Li Zixuan and Li Er talked about recruiting veterans, dividing the Turks, and calling for merchants to help the imperial court raise military funds. No one else was present at that time, and whether it was Li Zixuan, Cheng Yaojin, Qin Xiong, or Li Er, they were all tight-lipped people and would definitely not announce these things to outsiders. Thus, Madame Cheng naturally did not know that this fundraiser was organized by Li Zixuan and had been instructed by Li Er. What? This fundraiser was really organized by Xiao Xian, and His Majesty agreed? After Cheng Yaojin recounted the conversation between Li Zixuan and Li Er at Qin Manor that day, of course, he only said the part about calling for merchants to raise military funds. Madame Cheng was silent for a moment and said with some disbelief, How can it be fake? This old man was there at that time. After explaining, Cheng Yaojin relaxed. He picked up his bowl and chopsticks and continued to eat. Unexpectedly at this time, Madame Cheng slammed the table and glared, saying angrily, You old thing, since this fundraiser was organized by Xiao Xian, then how can our family only donate 5,000 strings of cash? Moreover, this was instructed by His Majesty. If our family donates less, who knows what the civil and military officials will secretly say about our family? Hearing this, Cheng Yaojin was stunned. He thought to himself, This woman's face changes faster than flipping a book. Just now, she was saying that we should donate more, but now she's complaining that we should donate less. This was truly unreasonable. Then in Madame's opinion, how much should our family donate? Cheng Yaojin smacked his lips and asked tentatively. After all, in terms of finances, Madame Cheng was still in charge of the Cheng Manor. Madame Cheng thought seriously and then said, Then donate 8,000 strings of cash. I checked the winery's account a few days ago, and there's still a lot of money left. We can still take out 8,000 strings of coins. Back then, before Cheng Yaojin had made a name for himself, Madame Cheng had already followed him. The two of them could be considered as a couple who had gone through hardships together. That was why Cheng Yaojin respected Madame Cheng so much. On the other hand, Although Madame Chung usually seemed unruly and shrewish, she was a very loyal person. She knew that the Chung family was making a lot of money every day because of Lisa Xuan. So, when she heard that the charity event was organized by Lisa Xuan, she immediately lost her petty attitude and became generous. Hee hee, fine. Then listen to Madam and donate 8,000 strings of cash. Chung Yaojin laughed heartily and gulped down the wine in his cup. Sigh, old master, I wonder how Chon Yo is doing in the Black Armored Army's camp. Speaking of Lisa Xuan, Madame Chung could not help but think of her eldest son. She sighed and said, I heard that among the armies in Chong, and the Black Armored Army's training is more important. I don't know if Ugly Ox can handle it. That kid's skin is tough. He'll be perfect for training in the Black Armored Army. Madam, don't worry. Everyone else might be in trouble, but he'll be fine. Besides, Xiao Xian is looking after him. Chung Yaojin felt that he had eaten enough and leaned back comfortably on the chair as he spoke. He was not worried about Ching Chumo at all. If he could endure half a year of training under the bearded man, how could he be troubled by the Black Armored Army? Even if he was worried about Chung Chumo, there was still Lisa Xuan. Old Chung had absolute confidence in Lisa Xuan. You old thing, you don't care about your own son at all. You don't act like a father at all. Madame Chung reprimanded Chung Yaojin and stood up to leave. Similar situations did not only happen in the Chung family tonight. The Qin family, Yuchi family, Niu family, and Dukwei residents also had similar situations tonight. These few families were on good terms with Lisa Xuan. After they found out from various sources that the fundraiser was organized by Lisa Xuan, they all made the decision to donate money. These were the officials from the military camp. Unexpectedly, there were also quite a few officials from the civil officials camp who intended to make use of this fundraiser to donate money. Duke Zhao residents. Chong-er, make a trip to our family's blacksmith shop tomorrow and get shopkeeper son to prepare 5,000 strings of coins. Donate it at the fundraiser 2 days later. In the study room, Zhang Sun Wuji spoke to Zhang Sun Chong. Father, our family is also participating in the fundraiser. I read in the newspaper that only merchants can participate in this fundraiser. Zhang Sun Chong asked doubtfully. Isn't shopkeeper Wang a merchant? Zhang Sun Wuji shook his head and said faintly, sigh. Chong-er, you don't understand. This fundraiser is His Majesty's helplessness to solve the emptiness of the national treasury and the lack of military resources. Our Zhangsun family has to contribute. As the head of the civil officials, he was naturally more well-informed than others. Moreover, just from the information that was circulating outside, he was able to deduce the general situation. The final decision-maker of the fundraiser was Li Er, and the final beneficiary was the imperial court. The Zhangsun family was a relative of the imperial family. If they were to set an example in this matter, it would be hard to avoid losing Li Er's trust. Zhangsun Wuji did not want to lose Li Er's trust. This fundraiser was actually organized by His Majesty. Hearing this, Zhang Sun Chong was shocked. I thought that the flaming yellow Chamber of Commerce wanted to show off in front of His Majesty. Zhang Sun Wuji shook his head again. This fundraiser might not have been His Majesty's idea, but it must have been approved by His Majesty. The flaming yellow Chamber of Commerce is just the executor. From the looks of it, this Li Zexuan's weight in His Majesty's heart is getting heavier and heavier. At such a young age, this lad was conferred the title of Marquis, and he is even holding a position in the Black Armored Army. In the future, if he performs meritorious service in the war against the Turkic Khaganate, I'm afraid that no one in the imperial court will be able to suppress him, right? There were both civil and martial arts. This was where Li Zexuan made Zhang Sun Wuji fearful. More importantly, Li Zexuan was young enough. At such a young age, he was able to achieve such meritorious service. In the future, their Zhangsun family would not be worth mentioning in front of Li Zexuan, right? Hearing his father's evaluation of Li Zexuan, Zhang Sun Chong lowered his head and did not dare to say a word. In this 1 year at Yanhuan College, he had seen too many people and things. This had changed his mindset and outlook. While Zhang Sun Wuji was still focused on the internal strife, Zhang Sunchong was already immersed in the magical new world of engineering. In Zhang Sunchong's eyes, Li Zixuan was changing the entire world with his own strength. He admired Li Zixuan from the bottom of his heart. Chong, I'll let you enroll in Yanhuang College. What have you found out in this 1 year? What is Li Zixuan's attitude towards the Zhang Sun family? Seeing Zhang Sunchong remain silent, Zhang Sun Wuji asked. When Yanhuang College was first established, under the leadership of the two princes, Li Tai and Li Ku, there were many officials in the capital who chose to enroll in Yanhuang College. Zhang Sunchong was one of them. However, he was carrying a mission given to him by Zhang Sun Wuji. Zhang Sun Wuji wanted Zhang Sunchong to get close to Li Zixuan in the academy and test Li Zixuan's attitude towards the Zhang Sun family. It would be best if he could rope them in. If he couldn't, and Li Zixuan's hostility towards the Zhang Sun family was obvious, then Zhang Sun Wuji would have to consider getting rid of Li Zixuan. He did not want anyone to break his position as the leader of the officials. The ambition of a powerful official of a generation was starting to show. Father, Yamacho doesn't like fighting. Currently, he still has goodwill towards our Zhang Sun family. After all, Father has helped Yamacho a few times before. However, Father, if you want to use this to recruit Yamacho to our Zhang Sun family and use him, I feel that it's impossible. Yamacho actually likes to study and develop his skills. He has no intention of fighting in the imperial court. From what I see, Father, you don't have to care so much about Yamacho's attitude. As long as our Zhang Sun family doesn't take the initiative to provoke him, I believe that he definitely won't be our enemy. Zhang Sunchong seriously thought for a moment before carefully speaking to Zhang Sun Wuji. These words were actually already suspicious of being biased towards Li Zixuan. Yanhuang College was a very mysterious and magical place. Anyone who stayed there for a long time would uncontrollably fall in love with it. They would fall in love with the beautiful scenery, the atmosphere, and the stubborn and pure people there. Therefore, even the pirate leader, the curly-bearded pirate, was reluctant to leave the academy. How could Zhang Sunchong be an exception? Under the imperceptible influence of the academy, his character had gradually undergone some changes, and perhaps even he himself hadn't noticed it. As the Yamacho of Yanhuang College, Li Zixuan was the spiritual leader in the hearts of all the teachers and students of Yanhuang College. Zhang Sunchong naturally didn't want a conflict between the father he respected the most and the spiritual idol he worshipped the most. Therefore, he said those words. No different from fighting in the imperial court? When Zhang Sun Wuji heard those words, he inexplicably laughed and said, he is in the situation, and I'm afraid that most of the time, it's not up to him. Forget it, now that the great Tang's external threat is more serious. Dealing with the Turks is the most important thing. As for Li Zixuan, let's keep an eye on him. After which, Zhang Sun Wuji tiredly rubbed his forehead and waved his hand to Zhang Sunchong. It's getting late. Chonger, go and rest. Yes, Father. Zhang Sunchong clasped his hands and turned to leave. Taiyuan, Wang family's ancestral residence. In a desolate courtyard, there was a room that was still lit by candlelight. Second young master, I heard that the Elder Hall still hasn't sent any elders to Chizhou. It seems like eldest young master's wedding this time has completely ruined his future. A middle-aged man with an aquiline nose bowed to a young man and said. That young man's hair was disheveled as he sat on the couch. When he heard those words, his originally lifeless eyes suddenly shone with a dazzling radiance. If that's the case, the family is going to abolish him soon? The young man sat up and leaned his body forward. He looked at the middle-aged man with an aquiline nose and said excitedly, under the candlelight, that young man's appearance was completely revealed. Wasn't this the second young master of the Wang family of Taiyuan, Wang Rini? Last year, Wang Rini colluded with bandits in Chang and City and kidnapped Han Yushi. In the end, the bandits were annihilated, and he, the second young master of the Wang family, was imprisoned. Later, Li Er returned Wang Rini to the Wang family for them to deal with. At that time, In order to seek Li Zishuan's forgiveness and appease Li Zishuan's anger, Wang Yu personally went to Chang'an City to apologize to Li Zishuan. Only then did Li Zishuan let go of his desire to kill Wang Rinyi. Wang Yu also promised Li Zishuan that Wang Rinyi would be imprisoned in the Wang family's ancestral home and would never be able to step out of the house. The aquiline-nosed man nodded excitedly and said, "It should be. Otherwise, the elders should go and congratulate the eldest son of the Wang family for his wedding. But until now, the elders haven't moved. This means that eldest young master has angered the elders, and it's only a matter of time before he is abolished. By then, second young master will definitely be the new successor of the family." Ha! Finally, Wang Rinyi, have waited for this day. Ha ha! I want to take revenge. I want Li Zishuan to die. No, I can't let him off so easily. I want to kidnap his wife, kill his parents, and destroy his family. Wang Rinyi stood up, looked up to the sky, and laughed maniacally. This subordinate congratulates second young master on regaining your freedom. The aquiline-nosed man knelt on one knee and cupped his hands. If this young master succeeds in the future, you, Shao Qing, will be the number one person by this young master's side. This young master will help you take revenge for your brother. Wang Rinyi laughed maniacally for a while before finally returning to normal. But his face was still flushed with excitement. He looked at the middle-aged man and said lightly. At this moment, the dispirited and lifeless youth from before had disappeared and was replaced by an ambitious lunatic. "Thank you, second young master." The aquiline-nosed man was called Shao Qing, and he was Shao Ying's younger brother. He and Shao Ying were both from the Chui clan of Qinghe. Last year, Wang Rinyi instructed Shao Ying to kidnap Han Yushi in order to obtain the formula for the immortal intoxication. Although Wang Rinyi was lucky enough to escape death, Shao Ying was naturally pushed out to take the blame and was beheaded in the end. In the 4th month of this year, the Chui clan of Qinghe, Chui clan of Bowling, and Zheng clan of Xinjiang were annihilated by the Imperial Army in Guangqing County. Without the support of his mother's family, Wang Rinyi's situation became even more difficult. Shao Qing and the rest of the people from the Chui clan of Qinghe were no longer welcome in the Wang family. Thus, they were sent to this desolate courtyard to take care of Wang Rinyi's food and lodging. But he never thought that Wang Rinyi would actually have a chance to make a comeback. How could Shao Qing not be wild with joy? "I can't go out now. Help me continue to pay attention to the movements outside. Once there's news, inform me immediately." Although Wang Rinyi's hair was still disheveled, his temperament had already returned to its usual calmness. He ordered Shao Qing with his hands behind his back. "Yes, second young master." Shao Qing accepted the order and left. Chapter 1784. The clan elders still haven't sent anyone. It seems they've decided to give up on my cousin. Qizhou Governor's Mansion, Eastern Courtyard. Princess Tang, and spoke casually as she fiddled with the teacup on the table. Wang Yu frowned. After a moment of silence, he said, "Logically speaking, this shouldn't be the case. 5 days ago, I sent a messenger pigeon to father and told him about the pros and cons of this matter. The clans are in a precarious situation and can no longer contend with the imperial court. Li Zishuan is also a popular figure in the imperial court. He established the academy, destroyed the clans, and attacked the Turks. This child's future is limitless. If we can make use of my cousin to form an alliance with Li Zishuan, then it will be absolutely beneficial to the Wang family. Father has always been far-sighted, and this old man believes that he will be able to see the pros and cons clearly and convince the other Wang family elders to make the right choice." Wang Yu's father, Wang Bing, was a minister of the previous dynasty. After he stepped down from his position as clan head, he joined the Wang clan's elder circle and assumed the position of Grand Elder. Princess Tang frowned slightly when she heard this. She raised her teacup and took a sip before she said, "But tomorrow is the day of my cousin's wedding, yet not a single one of the elders in the clan has come to Qizhou. That represents that they don't approve of my cousin's marriage, and they don't acknowledge my cousin as their eldest son. My cousin will have a hard time in the clan. Old Master, do you think they will make Ren-yi the successor of the Wang clan? Princess Tang and narrowed her eyes and looked at Wang Yu with a faint smile. Wang Ren-yi was also Wang Yu's son, but he was born of a concubine, Chui Qinfang. Wang Yu's concubine had a great background. She came from the Chui clan of Qinghe. How could a daughter of the Chui clan be married as a concubine? That was because Chui Qinfang was from the Chui clan's concubine and didn't have much of a presence. Moreover, the Wang clan of Taiyuan was one of the 5 clans and 7 hopes. It was not a disgrace to marry a daughter of a concubine to the head of the Wang clan as a concubine. Impossible. Wang Yu shook his head and said, Ren-yi, this child is too narrow-minded. Previously, he made an enemy of Li Zishuan and even offended half of the families of generals in the capital. Even if Biao was abandoned, it would not be Ren-yi's turn to replace his position. There are many talents in the family who are more outstanding than him. Now that the Chui clan has been annihilated, Wang Ren-yi won't be able to replace cousin as long as those elders aren't senile. Princess Tang and said coldly, her eyes chilling. Wang Ren-yi's greatest reliance in the Wang clan was the Chui clan of Qinghe. But now that the Chui clan of Qinghe no longer existed, his reliance had instead become a hindrance. As long as the elders of the Wang clan didn't want to be involved with the Chui clan of Qinghe, they would absolutely not help Wang Ren-yi ascend the throne. In Taiyuan, Wang Ren-yi, who was dreaming of regaining his freedom and regaining his power, had no idea that Wang Yu and Princess Tang had already sentenced him to death. He would never be able to make a comeback. Don't be so pessimistic. Things haven't reached the point of no return yet. After cousin's wedding, this old man will first return to the ancestral home with you and explain cousin's situation to the elders face to face. Then, we will return to Sui province. Wang Yu looked at Princess Tang and said gently, now that the imperial power was at its peak, it was no longer the world of the aristocratic families. Wang Yu felt that the elders of the Wang clan should understand that by dethroning Wang Renbiao, not only would they completely offend Li Zishuan, they would also offend Wang Renbiao, who represented the imperial family. This was extremely unwise. I'll listen to old master. Princess Tang and smiled and said, at night, the moon was bright and the stars were sparse. Around midnight, in the camp of the Black Armored Army, a group of people walked out of the camp quietly. They avoided many waves of patrolling soldiers along the way and finally arrived at the side of the kitchen of the E Battalion. At this time, other than the patrolling soldiers, the rest of the soldiers in the camp had all fallen asleep peacefully. Thus, the camp was extremely quiet. Only the sound of burning torches and the chirping of insects and birds could be heard in the camp. Dolly, where's the lieutenant of the B Battalion? You're not lying to us, are you? The group of people arrived at the kitchen and saw that other than them, there was no one else here. One of the soldiers couldn't help but ask angrily, that's right, Dolly, didn't you say that the lieutenant of the B Battalion would come? Where is he now? You brat, are you trying to play with us? You have to know that it is against the military rules to leave the camp without sleeping in the middle of the night. Another soldier also said, that's right, this group of people were the injured soldiers from the training in the past 2 days. After Ding Dolly heard by Shanhai's words, he returned to the camp and secretly contacted some of the injured soldiers who were on good terms with him. He told them everything that Bai Shanhai said to him in the afternoon. These people were mostly honest people and didn't have many tricks up their sleeves. After hearing Ding Dolly's words, they all felt that it made sense and secretly snuck out of the camp at midnight. However, they didn't expect to come here empty-handed. Sun Tao wasn't even here. Everyone couldn't help but feel a little angry. One had to know that they had secretly followed Ding Dolly here and had taken a huge risk. Don't rush. Let's wait a little longer. Shanhai won't lie to us. Let's wait a little longer. Lieutenant Sun Tao will definitely come. Ding Dolly was also a little scared, but he forced himself to be calm and comforted everyone. How long do we have to wait a little longer? If we come out for too long, we'll definitely be found out. The soldier who spoke first retorted, "That's right. We can't stay here for too long. If the squad leader finds out, we'll be finished." As soon as he finished speaking, someone immediately agreed. Ding Dolly wiped the sweat on his forehead. He didn't know if it was because of the hot weather or because he was anxious, but he pressed his hand down and said, "Be quiet. It'll be bad if we attract the patrols. Brothers, let's wait here quietly for a while. If Sun Tao doesn't come after 15 minutes, we'll go back, okay? By then, Ding Dolly will be at your disposal." "Okay, we'll wait for another 15 minutes." The leader pondered for a while and said. Everyone squatted at the side of the kitchen and began to wait quietly. "Did you see it clearly? Is there anything unusual?" Under a ginkgo tree not far away, Zhang Kongyan asked the soldiers beside him softly. Zhang Kongyan was the one who sowed discord, so Sun Tao would definitely not come tonight. This fellow, Zhang Kongyan, wasn't just adept at flattering others. He was crafty as well. Most importantly, he was extremely cautious in his actions. Before he came out to meet Ding Dolly and the others, he had to confirm that there was no one else in the surroundings. After all, what he was doing now couldn't be exposed, and if Li Zixuan or Duan Jixuan noticed it, then he would be completely finished. "Lieutenant, I've checked. There's nothing unusual around us. The people Ding Dolly brought should be the injured soldiers from the Wu Battalion." The guard next to Zhang Kunyan bowed and said, "Good, come with me." Zhang Kunyan sighed a breath of relief when he heard that. He walked out from behind the tree and walked toward the kitchen. The dozen or so soldiers beside him immediately followed after him. "Someone's coming." Beside the kitchen, Ding Dolly and the others quickly noticed the commotion here. Everyone's heart trembled as they stood up and looked cautiously at Zhang Kongyan and the others who were walking towards them. "Dolly, it's me." Bai Shanhai, who was following behind Zhang Kongyan, called out, "It's Shanhai. Lieutenant Sun Tao and the others are here." Hearing this familiar voice, Ding Dolly instantly shouted excitedly. God knows how much pressure he had endured during this period of waiting. Now that Bai Shanhai and the others had finally arrived, he was naturally overjoyed. Why is it Lieutenant Zhang from the 3rd Battalion? When Zhang Kongyan and the others came closer under the moonlight, everyone quickly realized that Sun Tao wasn't among them. The one leading them was actually Lieutenant Zhang Kongyan of the 3rd Battalion. Everyone couldn't help but feel displeased. There was no other reason other than Zhang Kongyan's reputation in the black armor troops wasn't good. Almost everyone knew how Zhang Kongyan became the lieutenant of the 3rd Battalion. There was no other reason other than that he had sucked up to Qiu Xingong. In the army, the strong were respected. People like Zhang Kongyan who didn't have any abilities and relied on sucking up to their superiors were the most disliked. Usually, everyone was unconvinced by Zhang Kongyan's actions. "Brother Shanhai, where's Lieutenant Sun Tao?" Ding Dolly also realized that Sun Tao wasn't among them and couldn't help but ask. Bai Shanhai coughed lightly and explained, "Lieutenant Sun has important matters to attend to tonight. He really isn't free, so he asked Lieutenant Zhang to come over. Don't worry, Lieutenant Sun and our Lieutenant Zhang are both righteous people. He also can't stand Lieutenant Li mistreating his soldiers. On this matter, Lieutenant Zhang will also..." Without waiting for him to finish, Zhang Kongyan opened his mouth and said, "Brothers, Shanhai is right. No matter how I, Zhang Kongyan, was in the past, I am of one heart and one mind with my brothers on this matter of defeating Li Zixuan. This matter was all planned by Lieutenant Sun Tao. He couldn't bear to see his brothers suffer under Li Zixuan's hands. Today, he should be the one to come over. However, Lieutenant Sun Tao had something to attend to at the last minute and couldn't leave. Thus, he asked me to come over. Everyone, don't worry. Lieutenant Sun Tao has already told me his plan. As long as you follow the plan, you will definitely be able to drive Li Zixuan out of the black armor troops. When that happens, you won't have to endure Li Zixuan's cruel training anymore." The reason why Zhang Kongyan wanted to use Sun Tao's name to win over the soldiers of the Wu Battalion was mainly because he knew that his reputation in the black armored troops wasn't good. Sun Tao was different. Sun Tao's martial arts were high, and he was extremely righteous. He loved to take the lead when something happened and treated the soldiers under him even better. Thus, Sun Tao's reputation in the black armor troops was still extremely good. Otherwise, Ding Dali wouldn't have turned against him just based on Bai Shanhai's words. Amongst all of this, Bai Shanhai's use of Sun Tao's name was a huge factor. Then Lieutenant Zhang, what do you think we should do next? An Wu Battalion soldier opened his mouth and asked. Zhang Kongyan smiled and said, "It's very simple. After you return to the camp, contact the other injured officers and soldiers in the camp. Persuade them to join our camp by persuading them with emotion and reason. On the other hand, you have to actively contact the rest of the soldiers who are not injured, especially those who are close to you. Tell them that although you are injured today, it might be their turn tomorrow." According to Li Zishuan's training method, before the war between the Tang Empire and the Turks, at least half of the soldiers in the Wu Battalion will die. You have to make them feel the same way and acknowledge you. Only then will they stand on the same side as us. Do you all understand? Is that it, Lieutenant Zhang? The soldier who first spoke up at this time, his tone revealing some dissatisfaction. That's right. What kind of plan is this? How can we convince Li Zishuan with just this? That's right. Lieutenant Zhang, what kind of plan is this? The rest couldn't help but agree. Zhang Kongyan smiled and said, "Of course it's not just this. After you have contacted enough people, I will lead you to choose a time to mutiny. This mutiny is no small matter. When the time comes, the general will definitely pay attention to this matter. When the time comes, you can tell the general your request. This way, Li Zishuan will definitely not be able to stay in the Black Armored Army, and the Wu Battalion will no longer be subjected to the harsh training." Hearing this, everyone was shocked. What? Mutiny? Mutiny in the army is punishable by death. Ding Dali's eyes widened, and a layer of cold sweat appeared on his forehead. The rest of the soldiers were also panicking. After all, they could talk about recruiting people, but to mutiny, they subconsciously rejected it. This was because since ancient times, mutinies in the army always ended up in a miserable state. Brothers, you don't have to worry. Mutiny is just a way for you to express your request, not your goal. Your goal is to drive Li Zishuan out of the Black Armored Army. When the time comes, Lieutenant Sun Tao and I will also help you. If the general blames you, General Chiu and I will plead for you. As the saying goes, the law cannot punish the majority. Furthermore, you are just expressing your request reasonably. The general will not do anything to you. Zhang Kongyan naturally saw through the worries in everyone's hearts. He gestured for them to be quiet, and then said in a deep voice. Everyone remained silent as they looked at each other. No one was willing to step out to express their opinions. After all, this matter was too serious. If they were to make a fuss, not only would they not be able to join the Black Armored troops, they might even lose their lives. Walala. Mutiny? Who wants to mutiny? Just when everyone was silent, the pile of firewood on the east side of the kitchen suddenly fell down without warning. Then, 3 people walked out from it. The person in the lead was burly and had an imposing aura. That person walked towards the crowd with a majestic gait. As he walked, he spoke coldly. Chapter 1785. Grand General. Outside the kitchen of the Black Armored Army's Wu Barracks, Ding Dali, Bai Shanhai, Zhang Kongyan, and the rest had a bad feeling when they heard the sudden voice. When they saw the person's face clearly, they were all scared out of their wits. The person who came was Duan Jishuan. Just a moment ago, they were still discussing how to mutiny. The next moment, Duan Jishuan, the highest-ranking general of the Black Armored Army, suddenly appeared in front of them. How could they not be shocked? Grand General, please spare my life. This lowly general. Zhang Kongyan's entire body was trembling. It was the hottest day of the summer, but he felt as if his entire body was shaking. This was because the moment Duan Jishuan appeared, his entire body was cold from the inside out. Driven by a strong desire to live, he crawled towards Qiu Xingong and repeatedly begged for mercy. However, since things had already come to this, even if he was usually eloquent and had a glib tongue, He couldn't think of a way to clear his name at this moment. Oomph. Zhang Kangyan, why don't you tell me? How can this general spare your life? Duan Jishuan snorted angrily and kicked away Zhang Kangyan, who was trying to crawl over to hug his thigh. Grand General, this lowly general. At this moment of life and death, Zhang Kangyan forced himself to calm down. At this moment, his brain was spinning rapidly, trying to find an excuse to clear his name. But before he could think of a way to open his mouth, another person beside Duan Jishuan spoke up. Lieutenant Zhang, I'm really sorry. The Grand General and I agreed to come here to observe the stars an hour ago. We really didn't expect to meet you here discussing such important matters. So, the Grand General heard every single word you said just now. Lisa Xuan. Hearing this voice, Zhang Kangyan noticed that there were two people beside Duan Jishuan. One was Lisa Xuan, and the other was the lieutenant of the Wu Battalion, Sun Jiping. Lisa Xuan's words really made Zhang Kangyan gnash his teeth in anger. What did he mean by agreed to come here to observe the stars an hour ago? You King observed the stars in a pile of firewood? Who are you trying to fool? However, at the same time that Zhang Kangyan was gnashing his teeth in hatred, his heart had fallen to the bottom of the valley, and he was completely disheartened. At this moment, even if he had a peerless eloquence, he would not be able to clear his name from this matter. Thinking of the tragic fate he would face next, Zhang Kangyan was terrified. Tears and snot flowed down his face. He could only kowtow his head to the ground and beg for mercy. Great General, this general is guilty. This general was confused for a moment. Please spare this general's life. Oomph. What a momentary confusion. Duan Jishuan's face was as cold as frost, and a strong killing intent burst out from his eyes, which made the air around him seem to have become colder. He stared coldly at Zhang Kangyan, who was lying on the ground, and said angrily, You were muddle-headed for a moment, so you sent someone to secretly instigate discord in the Wu Battalion. You were muddle-headed for a moment, and then instigated these soldiers of the Wu Battalion to mutiny? Could it be that your actions today were completely due to a moment of confusion? Spare me, Great General. Have mercy, Great General. Although Zhang Kangyan's heart was filled with fear, he still had a trace of rationality left in him. He still didn't expose Xiao Xingong, because he knew clearly that he couldn't escape from the blame for what happened tonight. If he didn't expose Xiao Xingong, perhaps Xiao Xingong could still save him. At the very least, even if he died, Xiao Xingong could still treat his family well. Oomph. And you guys, Duan Jishuan didn't even bother to pay attention to Zhang Kangyan. Perhaps in his eyes, Zhang Kangyan was already a dead man. It would be a waste of time to talk to him. He turned around and looked at Ding Dali and the other injured soldiers of the Wu Battalion and said angrily, All of you can't tell right from wrong. Just a little bit of slanderous talk, and you all waver. You don't have any persistence in your hearts. Now you're actually discussing a mutiny in the camp. Do you know what the punishment for mutiny in the Black Armored Army is? Hearing this, Ding Dali and the other injured soldiers instantly broke out in cold sweat. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly and could only bury their heads in the ground. Oomph. Sun Jiping, tell me, what is the punishment for mutiny in the army? Seeing that no one in front of him spoke, Duan Jishuan snorted coldly and said. Sun Jiping immediately stood up, bowed and cupped his fist, and said, Great General, according to the military rules, mutiny in the army should be beheaded. Chapter 1786. Zhang Kangyan, by Shanhai and the others deliberately incited the soldiers to mutiny. They have violated the military rules, so they will be punished according to the military rules. If you execute them without permission, you will be punished even more. Li Zishuan snatched the MO sword from Ding Dali's hand and waved it to the side. The MO sword was stabbed into the ground. Then he looked at the rest of the soldiers behind Ding Dali, and a strange smile appeared on his face. He said, In the past 2 days, 52 of our brothers in the Wu Battalion were injured because of the training. Regarding this, as your commanding officer, I cannot shirk my responsibility. Of course, what makes me feel gratified is that among the 52 brothers, only 12 of you listened to the instigation and came to meet Lieutenant Zhang secretly. This means that most of the brothers can still understand my good intentions. On the first day of a new drill, 42 soldiers of the V Battalion were injured. On the second day, 10 soldiers were injured. In total, 52 soldiers were injured in the 2 days. Although Zhang Kongyan had prepared well in order to drive a wedge between the wounded soldiers, but in the end, only 12 of them were shaken. Of course, some of them knew what was right and what was right, but they couldn't rule out the fact that Li Zixuan played an important role in patrolling the barracks last night and treating the wounded soldiers. Hearing this, the 12 wounded soldiers of the Wu Battalion, including Ding Dali, all lowered their heads in shame. Indeed, after listening to Zhang Kongyan's fabricated speech, their hearts were indeed shaken. Zhang Kongyan had taken advantage of their weakness of not having a strong will, and that was why his evil plan had almost succeeded. General, although they listened to the instigation of Zhang Kongyan and the others, but when Zhang Kongyan persuaded them to mutiny, none of them agreed. This proves that they don't have the intention to mutiny. Because of this, I hope the general can give them a way out and spare their lives. Seeing the wounded soldiers of the Wu Battalion all lowered their heads in shame and didn't dare to say anything, Li Zixuan turned to Duan Jixuan and bowed. Duan Jixuan's eyes flashed slightly. He didn't immediately agree, but he didn't explicitly object either. After a moment of silence, he ordered Sun Jiping, I order you to return to the camp immediately and mobilize a group of soldiers to capture these people. In order to avoid exposing themselves, only the 3 of them were hiding in the pile of firewood tonight. But even without a single soldier, Duan Jixuan was not afraid. This was the Black Armored Army's camp. He did not believe that anyone would dare to go against his will. Even if there was, he was confident that he could subdue them with his own strength. This general obeys. Sun Jiping bowed and cupped his fists, loudly accepting the order and leaving. Duan Jixuan slowly walked up to Zhang Kongyan, and an invisible aura pressed down on Zhang Kongyan. Zhang Kongyan immediately found it difficult to breathe, and even his blood seemed to freeze. At this moment, a moment felt like 1,000 years to him. Finally, Duan Jixuan opened his mouth. Zhang Kongyan, who ordered you to incite the wounded soldiers of the Wu Battalion. Although Duan Jixuan's voice wasn't loud, but to Zhang Kongyan, who had just suffered a great deal of mental torture, these few words were like thunder, like a huge bell, exploding in his mind. For a moment, he actually lost his mind and almost told Duan Jixuan the truth. General, this matter was caused by a moment of confusion, and I acted on my own accord. No one ordered me to do this. Chapter 1787. Huff. After settling everything, Li Zixuan returned to his tent. Cheng Chumo and Yuchi Baolin were already asleep. Even though the 2 of them wanted to know the outcome of the matter, they couldn't withstand the fatigue. After all, to Yuchi Baolin, the training during the day was extremely tiring, and to Cheng Chumo, helping Li Zixuan with the sand table in the afternoon was extremely taxing on his brain. These 2 fellows, looking at the 2 sleeping men, Li Zixuan couldn't help but shake his head helplessly. He thought to himself, I have to fall asleep while listening to the snoring of these 2 brothers again. Even though the 2 of them were nominally his personal guards, Li Zixuan had never treated them as his personal guards. To him, Cheng Chumo and Yuchi Baolin were his students, and more importantly, his brothers. Although I didn't manage to uncover Qiu Xingong, the mastermind behind the scenes, I did manage to cut off one of his arms. I hope that old man can take care of himself and stop causing trouble for me in the next few months. After washing up, Li Zixuan laid on his bed and thought to himself. He only joined the Black Armored Army because he was given an order in the nick of time. After the Black Armored Army's expedition to the north was over, even if Li Er didn't allow him to leave, he would still ask to leave. Joining the army wasn't his ambition, but it was the best way to help Tang get rid of the Turks. If possible, he didn't want to become enemies with Qiu Xingong during this period of time. After all, to the Black Armored Army, he was just a passerby. After the matter was settled, the Black Armored Army would return to its original state. However, not wanting to become enemies didn't mean that he was afraid of it. Zhang Kangyan inciting the soldiers of the Wu Battalion to mutiny not only crossed Duan Jishuan's bottom line, it also crossed Li Zishuan's bottom line. Since someone was trying to bully him, he naturally had to retaliate. That was why when Duan Jishuan sentenced Zhang Kangyan and the others to death, he didn't plead for mercy like the previous time. He wanted to use this opportunity to give Qiu Xingong a warning, so that the old man wouldn't cause trouble for him anymore. Dong 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 dong. The great general has ordered all soldiers to gather at the drill ground. The great general has ordered all soldiers to gather at the drill ground. Early the next morning, before the sun had even risen, the sound of drums could be heard in the Black Armored Army's camp. All the soldiers in the camp heard the drums, and immediately after, there were soldiers shouting to and fro in the various tents. The military camp, which had been silent for an entire night, immediately began to move. The soldiers who had been lying on the bed a moment ago stood up and quickly put on their armor. Because the plate armor produced by the Strange Interest Pavilion was a full-body armor, it was difficult for one person to put it on. Usually, two people had to work together to put it on in the shortest time possible. In fact, it wasn't just the new plate armor. The armor worn by the Black Armored troops in the past wasn't something that could be easily worn either. Hence, in actual battles, many soldiers couldn't take off their armor when they slept. This was because the situation on the battlefield was constantly changing. One moment, they could be sleeping peacefully, but the next moment, the enemy could break into their camp. Why do we have to gather at the drill ground today? Although the soldiers were putting on their armor and preparing to assemble out of the habit of obeying orders, they still couldn't help but find it strange. As usual, unless there was an important matter, the first thing the soldiers did when they woke up in the morning was to train according to the training schedule of each camp. The soldiers of A, D, and E camps were to run 10 li with their armor on. The soldiers of B and C camps were to practice their swordsmanship or lance skills. They could only go for breakfast after they finished running or practicing. Going to the drill ground directly after waking up meant that there was likely to be an important announcement. Xiao Xian, what time did you come back last night? In the tent, Cheng Chumo, who had been woken up by the drums, asked Li Zishuan as he and Yuchi Baolin helped each other put on their armor. Li Zishuan's skills were a notch higher, so he didn't need any help to put on the armor. When he heard Cheng Chumo's question, he faintly replied, I came back around midnight. Why? It's a quarter to midnight. So late? Baolin and I should have been asleep by then. Cheng Chumo frowned and muttered under his breath. Then he suddenly looked excitedly at Li Zishuan and asked, Then how was the battle last night? Did Bai Shanhai bring son, Tao, to the meeting? Did the Grand General go with you to catch the traitors? Seeing Cheng Chumo's eagerness for knowledge and that this fellow had helped him resolve a hidden danger, Li Zishuan patiently explained. Sun Tao didn't go last night, but the lieutenant of the 3rd Battalion, Zhang Kangyan, went. That bastard instigated Ding Dali and the others to mutiny on the spot. The Grand General, me, and Jeeping hid in the pile of firewood and heard their plan clearly. Then we captured Zhang Kangyan by Shanhai, Ding Dali, and the others. Captured all of them? And then? How did the Grand General deal with them? Cheng Chumo listened with great interest. After all, the reason why Duan Jishuan and Li Zishuan were able to resolve Zhang Kangyan's plan so easily was mainly because he had informed them beforehand. Cheng Chumo waited for a long time, but Li Zishuan didn't continue, so he couldn't help but ask. How he dealt with them, you'll know in a while. It's getting late. Why aren't you gathering at the drill ground? If you're late, you'll be the ones to be punished. Li Zishuan had already put on his armor. Hearing this, he rushed out of the tent and urged Cheng Chumo. Xiao Xian, wait for us. The Black Armored Army was an elite force, so the soldiers gathered very quickly. In less than a quarter of an hour, the soldiers of the 5 battalions were all gathered on the drill ground. Very quickly, the soldiers of the 3rd Battalion discovered an extremely abnormal and strange phenomenon. That was, their lieutenant was actually missing. Usually, for such a large gathering of the entire army, the lieutenant, as the commanding officer of the battalion, couldn't be absent. But today was just so strange. The soldiers of the 3rd Battalion scanned the entire drill ground with their eyes and didn't find Zhang Kanyan's figure. Not only that, some of them even discovered that there were people missing from the troop. Su Jia, where's Meng Yujiang? Where did he go? I don't know. Isn't he staying in the same tent as you? He was still here last night, but I didn't see him after I woke up early. There's such a thing? Guoming is also missing. Similar voices could be heard from more than one place in the 3rd Battalion. The situation in the 3rd Battalion wasn't any better. Reporting. Lieutenant, there are a total of 5 people from our battalion that have not arrived. They are by Shanhai, Yang Qingyun, Wu Feibai, Tan Xingye, and Zhao Xingwang. In front of the 3rd Battalion, Sun Tao, as the lieutenant, was organizing the troops at the front. At this moment, the personal guard he sent to count the number of people ran back and cupped his fists and reported to him. By Shanhai, Yang Qingyun, Wu Feibai, Tan Xingye, Zhao Xingwang. When he heard these 5 names, Sun Tao's expression couldn't help but become unnatural. Because the 5 people that Zhang Kanyan borrowed from him were by Shanhai, Yang Qingyun, Wu Feibai, Tan Xingye, and Zhao Xingwang. Where are they? After a moment of silence, Sun Tao forced himself to calm down and asked the personal guard. Last night's incident happened at midnight. Most of the soldiers in the battalion were already asleep, and the secret meeting location that Zhang Kangyan chose was extremely secretive. Unless someone purposely sent someone to investigate like Qiu Xinggong, it was impossible to know what happened outside of the 5th Battalion's kitchen last night. Sun Tao was no exception. Sun Tao didn't participate in the entire plan to sow discord. He didn't know why Zhang Kanyan transferred by Shanhai and the rest. And he also didn't know that Zhang Kanyan was going to secretly meet the wounded soldiers of the 5th Battalion in the 5th Battalion's kitchen last night. Lieutenant, according to the squad leader of by Shanhai and the rest tent, they were still in the tent last night, but they were all gone this morning. The personal guard bowed and replied, Gone. Sun Tao's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly had a very bad feeling. At this moment, Qiu Xinggong appeared on the high platform in front of the drill ground. However, compared to the past, Qiu Xinggong didn't seem to be in a good mood today. Sun Tao waved his hand at the personal guard and said, All right, I know, you can leave now. Yes, Lieutenant. The personal guard cupped his fists and turned to leave. Looks like Zhang Kangyan must have started his operation last night, but it failed. Sun Tao thought to himself as he looked at the gloomy Qiu Xinggong on the high platform and the leaderless dragon in front of the 3rd Battalion. At this point, no matter how stupid he was, he could guess that something must have happened last night, and it was Zhang Kangyan who brought by Shanhai and the rest with him. The Grand General has arrived. At this moment, Duan Jishuan appeared on the right front of the drill ground. The 5 battalions instantly quieted down. All the soldiers stopped moving and stood straight on the spot, without moving an inch. Duan Jishuan quickly walked to the front of the drill ground. The black armored soldiers below the stage shouted in unison, Greetings, Grand General. Their voices were like a loud bell that could topple mountains and overturn seas. Rise, soldiers! Duan Jishuan shouted loudly. The soldiers below the stage stood straight again. Duan Jishuan's expression turned serious as he said in a deep voice, I have gathered all the soldiers here today because I have something important to announce. Last night, Lieutenant Zhang Kanyan of the 3rd Battalion led by Shanhai, Yang Qingyun, Wu Feibai, Tan Xingye, Zhao Xingwang of the 2nd Battalion, Zhao Fei, Sun Gang, Meng Yujiang, Han Sheng, Su Peng, and Feng Chang of the 3rd Battalion to secretly meet with Ding Dali, Yao Wuda, and the injured soldiers of the 5th Battalion in the kitchen of the 5th Battalion. Zhang Kanyan instigated Ding Dali and the rest to mutiny by framing Adjunct Li and sowing discord among the soldiers. If it wasn't for Lieutenant Sun Jiping of the 5th Battalion arriving in time and arresting all of them, Zhang Kongyan's evil plan would have succeeded. At that time, our black armored army would have become the laughingstock of the 12 capital garrison guards. Everyone was shocked when they heard this, especially the soldiers of the 2nd and 3rd battalions. They finally knew why their battalions were short of people today. It was because something so big had happened last night. Mutiny in the army, that was a capital offense. Although the soldiers below the general appointment stage were shocked, none of them whispered to each other due to their excellent military discipline. At the same time, they could feel a trace of murderous intent from Duan Zhishuan's tone. As expected, Duan Zhishuan continued to speak. As the commander-in-chief of the Black Armored Army, I can't let the reputation of the Black Armored Army be ruined by such despicable people. Listen up. Zhang Kongyan led his men to secretly incite the soldiers to mutiny. His crime cannot be punished. At noon today, Zhang Kongyan by Shanhai, Yang Qingyun, Wu Feibai, Tan Xingye, Zhao Xingwang, Zhao Fei, Sun Gang, Meng Yujiang, Han Sheng, Su Peng, and Feng Chang, a total of 11 people, will be executed in public. As for the lieutenant of the 3rd Battalion, Adjunct Li will temporarily take over. From today onwards, the 3rd Battalion, 1st Battalion, 4th Battalion, and 5th Battalion will implement a new training program. The soldiers below the stage were shocked. They didn't expect Duan Zhishuan to be so ruthless. He killed one person in one breath, and one of them was even a lieutenant of the 3rd Battalion. It seemed like Duan Zhishuan was really angry. On the other hand, Li Zishuan was a little surprised. He wasn't surprised by Duan Zhishuan's treatment of Zhang Kongyan. He was surprised that Duan Zhishuan had actually given him the position of lieutenant of the 3rd Battalion. This was something he had never expected. As you command. After hesitating for a moment, Li Zishuan saw Duan Zhishuan giving him a signal with his eyes. He could only step forward and bow. Duan Zhishuan had helped him so much. He didn't want to disregard Duan Zhishuan's face. Furthermore, this lieutenant position was only given to him, and it wouldn't last forever. Furthermore, by taking over this lieutenant position, he had cut off one of Qiu Xingong's arms in the black armored troops. From now on, the 3rd Battalion would no longer be under Qiu Xingong's personal use. On the stage, Qiu Xingong, who was standing behind Duan Zhishuan, had flames in his eyes and his face was twitching. Just as Li Zishuan had thought, Duan Zhishuan's action had directly cut off one of his arms in the black armored troops. If he could, he really wanted to stand out and object, but he couldn't. Because he was heavily implicated in last night's incident, he still didn't know how much information Duan Zhishuan had obtained from Zhang Kongyan. Therefore, even though Qiu Xingong had cut off one of his arms, he could only endure it and didn't dare to act rashly. Below the stage, after hearing Duan Zhishuan's words, Sun Tao couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Last night's incident had nothing to do with him, but Qiu Xingong's decision had a lot to do with him. Because according to Qiu Xingong's words, Li Zishuan would temporarily take over the position of lieutenant of the 3rd Battalion, and the 3rd Battalion would also have to start training according to the new drill. In this way, their 2nd Battalion would be the only battalion in the black armor troops that still adhered to the old drill. This basically meant that Duan Zhishuan had tacitly acknowledged the superiority of the new drill. Then, what was the point of the competition between the 2nd and 5th Battalions 8 days later? This was a competition that had already been lost before it even started. At this moment, Sun Tao only wanted to look up to the sky and sigh, "I am so lonely." Of course, with this fellow's literary skills, he definitely wouldn't be able to say such a poetic sentence. But the general idea was still the same. At this moment, Duan Zhishuan continued on the stage. Ding Dali and the rest listened to slanderous words and disrupted the morale of the troops. They can be spared from death, but they can't escape punishment. Men, bring Sun Dali and the rest up. In front of all the soldiers, strip them of their clothes and flog them 40 times. "Yes, sir," Sun Jiping hurriedly went up to receive the order. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.